Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of art, it's the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson here with the 2003 Highland Games and Celtic Festival ferret legging champion. You know him as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world. My partner in art, Wes Brown.
Oh my God, Todd, that really brings back memories. Holy crap, 2003. You really dug in to find that one.
I told you, this is the year. We kind of put it on hold for a little bit, but I just know that there's gems to be mined out there on the internet. And I consulted Lord Google once again today, found out that you had participated in ferret legging.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. It's not for the weak of heart, that's for sure.
I think anytime you take kind of a semi-wild animal and you stick it down your pants, it is a recipe for something bad to happen. I commend you for being that brave, but ferrets have claws and teeth, and
yes,
you're
do.
Sticking it in your pants. That sounds just
and they will use them. They will use them because they want out just as bad as you want them out. They want out. So they're finding a way. So let me tell you how this all got started. Okay. My first foray into this was in the 70s when I worked on the farm and we were cleaning out the grain bin, and lo and behold, I was shoveling and then a rat was in the grain bin, ran up my pants leg, and I just happened to catch him right at the top of my thigh, and I caught him at the bottom of my legging. So he was in between and he was not having it. But my friend, whose dad owned the farm, he came out and he said, hold still. And he took his big shovel. Remember the shovels, the big aluminum, 24.5-inch aluminum? He took one of those shovels.
Called the Amish shovels?
Yeah.
The one you do for the snow shoveling racing?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly. He took the shovel and banged it against that rat in my pants. And then I kind of shook my leg and he came out. So when I was in England, I saw this and I thought, well, I already got experience. Let me just jump in. So there we have it. That was the beginnings of it all.
Okay. So you did this prior to participating in this contest in Richmond, Virginia.
Right. I was like 15 when the rat incident was like 15. I was like 15.
Well, that in itself is scary, but to then revisit this whole thing with ferrets. So I know that some people in these contests, it's 2 ferrets and sometimes it's 1 ferret. Was it a 1 or 2 ferret deal?
This was a 1 ferret thing because I couldn't quite do 2. It was like freaking me out. So I had flashbacks from the rat incident. But I thought I would give it a try, maybe break that kind of fear of rats. So I thought, well, ferret, what the heck, right?
And for people that are listening, in this contest, you tie the bottoms of your pants. You got to wear loose pants. You tie the bottoms of the pants so the ferret can't run out. And then it's game on. And it's for however long. It's a timed thing. It's however long you can stand it. And you endured 3 hours and 13 minutes, it looks like, in this contest that you participated in. Did you get bit? Did you get clawed?
I had my rabies shots not too long after that, but I did get clawed up pretty good. I don't think he bit me, but he did claw me up pretty good. And so I think I passed out twice, just briefly. Like I didn't hit the ground, but I think I started to black out and then kind of came to before I hit the ground. So yeah, it was a bit much.
But no ferrets were
no ferrets were hit with shovels.
Killed or maimed in this.
Just one rat in 1977. So,
and again, this is a contest that started in the UK in Yorkshire. Again, probably bunch of guys sitting around drinking excessively because you won't see women doing something ridiculous like this. But these guys were supposedly coal miners that started this whole thing. And they did actually try to do a female version of this contest where you'd stick a ferret down your blouse, but it didn't go anywhere, obviously, because women are smarter than men. We all know that. Once again, you amaze me, Wes Brown.
Yeah. It's crazy. You'd think women would be used to having some ferret all over down their blouse. I mean, come on.
I don't even know where you're going with that.
Okay,
anyway,
we'll leave it
there. Ferrets stink too. So
yes.
You have to go home and shower afterwards? Like, do you just stink like ferret?
I did scrub-a-dub-dub.
All right. Well, good for you.
Little musky
Once
smell
again,
after.
another thing that I can tick off your resume that,
Oh my God. I
never
can't
ceased to
believe you keep
amaze me,
finding
like I
this kind
said.
of stuff.
All
So
right.
that was
Well, thank
fun.
you. Yeah,
Thank you.
for reminding you of that.
Right.
I think we need to do a photo shoot with ferrets
There we go.
for our next promo.
All right.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can always find out what we're up to via our social media on Instagram at Tenant Podcast and our Tenant Podcast Facebook page. And then, of course, our website, tenantpodcast.com. Our guest this week hails from the great state of Ohio. What do I always say about Ohio, Wes Brown?
Great things come from Ohio.
Yes, everything great comes from Ohio.
I screwed
Filmmakers, astronauts, presidents, musicians,
podcast hosts,
artists. He's a digital and mixed media artist whose work revolves around pop culture and science fiction themes. His work collected by the late Carrie Fisher, and he's created commission pieces for Norman Reedus of Walking Dead fame. You can check out his work at the website billyludwig.net, and you can follow him on Instagram at Billy Ludwig. Billy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. We've been following you for a while on social media, and I just love your work.
Thank you.
Where in Ohio are you from?
I am from North Canton, Ohio, Jackson Township, about half hour south of Akron.
Oh, okay. I was born in Akron, Ohio, actually.
Oh, okay.
Oh my
I
God.
spent a lot of time up there. That's pretty much where the majority of my friends are at and where we hang is Akron.
What township again?
Jackson Township.
Jackson Township. That's right. That's where you currently live?
Yes, that's where I currently live.
Okay.
Not that I'm here that much. It's funny when I do go out around town, everyone's kind of like, what are you doing in town? And just because I travel so much, I'm always on the road. But yeah, I'm looking to relocate, but still here for the time being.
Where are you thinking of relocating to?
New York City.
Really?
For sure. Yeah. I've got friends out there, and I've been looking consistently. I'm not in a rush to spend that amount of money on rent every month, but it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
And you just think that would be beneficial for your art career? Or
yeah, I think
you just really enjoy the New York scene?
That too. Yeah. I feel very comfortable there, and I have for many years. I'm typically in New York 2-3 times a year, and have been for almost the past 10 years now. And I don't know, I just gravitate towards that city and the lifestyle. And and I do think for my career and for art, I think it would be good to be there, and Miami, LA, these have also been ideas and thoughts as well. And it's been a battle, and I've gone back and forth. Even last year, or the year before last, I had a going away party because I was moving to Miami, and then I decided not to. So we had a I'm staying home party. So, ideas change, but New York seems to be the clear winner right now, but that could change.
And why were you thinking about moving to Miami? I mean, just the art scene there, or
the art scene there. Yeah, I love the art scene there. I actually had a place in Brickell downtown, and it just didn't feel right for whatever reason. But I think with Miami, I love it more around, when Art Basel's there. But I do love the art scene. I love the galleries down there. I'm very comfortable in Miami as well. Completely different vibe in comparison to New York City. But I do like Miami very much.
Now, do you go to Art Basel every year?
I do. I wasn't able to go this past one because I was doing a show in LA. And that really bummed me out, but it was a conflict of dates. So I couldn't go this year. But I already have my hotel booked for next year, or this year at this point. Yeah.
Nice. So is there a difference between like the art scene in Miami and the art scene in New York? Is there something that a person could put their finger on that's a little different?
Yeah, I would say that. And it changes, but I feel that Miami is probably a little bit more street art focused, where New York is maybe geared more towards the masters and, just names that are very heavily collected. You've got Christie's there, you've got Sotheby's, you have a lot of the major, Gagosian. You've got these major art galleries there, and there's big ones in Miami as well. But I feel that there's a much larger market in New York City. People in Miami would probably not be happy about me saying that. There's always a battle between Miami and New York when it comes to just about everything. But I would say that to me that would be the biggest difference. Is I do feel street art takes precedence in Miami, but there's an awful lot of street art in New York City as well. So, I could be wrong in saying that, but in my opinion, I would say that that's the big difference.
So Art Basel, we've never have experienced that ourselves. Talk a little bit about what that's like and what you do when you're there.
Most of the time, I'm just there to just kind of absorb everything and check out the art that's there and what I feel is taking precedence and what's up and coming. And the thing with Art Basel is the main art fair, but there's all these satellite events that kind of everybody calls Art Basel. They're definitely trying to make it, title it more Miami Art Week. I gravitate more towards Context and Art Miami, those fairs. I feel that the things that they have there are more of the direction of things that I do myself and are just a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit more up and coming. Art Basel itself it's great. I mean, there is stuff at all the fairs that is just absolutely mind blowing to me, and can definitely be inspiring. There's other things, of course, and art's always subjective, that you see something that's going for six figures and it's like, why why are we doing this? This looks like a bunch of coat hangers wrapped together, but we're going to go ahead and price it at 160,000, whatever it might be. But I feel I started going to Art Basel in 2018, and I have definitely learned a lot. It's got me to follow different artists, different galleries, and just have more confidence in things that I do, especially with my mixed media work. When I started doing that, I just had an idea and I did it. And then after the fact, then I started to figure out where in the art world this fits in, and over time, then I started to kind of mold it so maybe it fit in a little bit better, or made what I started to try and make more sense of what I was doing, because I really didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to be destructive, to be quite honest. I'd be at Comic-Cons, and downtime I'd start sketching and drawing on my own prints and just writing all over them, and I enjoyed that. And a lot of it was just tested markers when I had to sign stuff, but I enjoyed just sketching over top of my stuff. And then I came home and I just put all my artwork on a board and started slashing it up and dumping paint on it and spray painting it and just distressing it, making a mess of it, really. But at some point I wanted it to make a little bit more sense, and it has evolved over time. But I feel like going to those art fairs, I have absolutely learned a lot, just even looking at what, again, art's always subjective, but what, would be considered a good abstract piece opposed to perhaps not a good abstract piece, and I've learned that from going to museums. When I travel, I always try and stop whatever art museums there and just learn and study what everybody's doing and have done. But Art Basel is it's a lot. It's always educational for me going there. So I hated missing out this year for sure.
So educational also gives you a little bit of context, having your finger kind of on the pulse of what's going on in the world.
Sure.
And then it probably really helps solidify, like, where you're at and your vision. Like, am I on the right path? And am I doing something that, that is good, I guess? Because every artist has that question in their mind. Like, am I doing work that matters, Which,
well, and I
definitely think you are.
Yeah.
But
Thank you. I appreciate that. like I said, going to those shows, there were certain pieces that I saw that I really liked, and it gave me more confidence. Like, I can do this, I can do this, or I feel I fit in with this artist that I really like, or a different artist. And, but at the same time, there was other stuff that I'd see that it would be like, all right, they're doing this much better than I would do it. And this is where I need to clean things up, or this is where I need to evolve and change things a little bit more. And I'm always kind of adding or taking away things that I do. But I feel like when you see that stuff in person, it is a whole, and with my own stuff, it's a whole different world. It's really hard, especially online and digital, just seeing the texture and the depth to a lot of things. I mean, even great pieces of artwork going to the Art Institute of Chicago and seeing American Gothic by Grant Wood. It's you've seen it so many times, and recently at MoMA, I just saw Starry Night. You've seen it so many times, but seeing it in person, you see all that paint and all that texture and the layers and all the different things. It's just a whole different experience seeing stuff in person. And that's something, I learned too, just from street artists I like, going to Art Basel and like someone like Sticky Peaches and seeing his work in person, or Shepard Fairey. Like, you would never know there's so many different layers and how intricate it is. And, just looking at it, a lot of times I don't want to know how it's done, but it's still mesmerizing to see, okay, this layer goes over this one, but this layer does this. And then there's another layer that goes over it, but it's underneath all these other ones. And that's just, that's the kind of stuff that I think you definitely miss online, that you have to see in person to really, really appreciate it, what they're doing, especially guys like that.
And that makes total sense because of what you do and working in, layers, whether it's your digital work or your mixed media stuff.
Yeah.
It's very layered, right?
It's extremely layered. Yeah. And, I've had people, like with my digital stuff at shows or whatever, like, oh, it's just Photoshop shit. And it's like, yeah, you try and do this. I mean, now we have AI. Maybe AI could just be like, yeah, I could do that. But, for the most part, anything I do there, if you would see the files and the file sizes of a lot of the stuff I do, I mean, some of it's over a gig of just layers and layers and layers. And, you do that to make it look like there's not that many layers, and it's simple. But it's really not, with my Star Wars versus World War II series, a lot of that, the ideas are, for the most part, they come to me fairly easy at times, but then it's extremely tedious to actually make those things happen, especially on some. It's like, I got all the guys pulling all the stormtroopers pulling the Mickey Mouse balloon. And, initially it was just like guys with mouse ears pulling the Mickey Mouse balloon down through the parade route, the Macy's parade route. But I swapped all those guys out for stormtroopers, just posing them and getting it right and getting all the angles right and getting them in there and getting those guys out of there. And that was just one part of the piece. Took forever to do that. And it was very, very tedious. Some of them just fall right into place, but and I've gotten a little bit better over the years. I can get them done a little bit faster. I have more of a formula and a process to it, but there's a lot of layers for sure with anything I do.
Well, that's kind of
whether
the highest,
whether you see them or not. You might not see them,
right?
But they're there.
Were you self-taught in Photoshop, or did you take any kind of school? Yeah.
No, this was back in 2002. I just knew I had to get a computer. I had one buddy that did a couple that did graphic design, and I got a pirated copy of Photoshop 7. And, I understand this now, but at the time I'd ask friends, like, just teach me something to do. Teach me something on here. Well, what are you trying to do? I'm like, I don't know. Like, just teach me something. And they're like, well, tell us what you want to do. And then we can give you some direction. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know where to go. So I started, I had the band at the time, and I just started typing out my lyrics and doing kind of abstract, kind of weird digital stuff behind it. And eventually I started doing show posters for friends, and started booking shows on my own all around Northeast Ohio, just so I could do the show posters and get my artwork out there. And then the shows took precedence. And then I just had to keep ripping, like, images and appropriating images to create these show posters. I was so busy with shows. I know the one band, the one year, just the one band booked them over 80 shows within the year. And it was just every Friday, Saturday, and Sundays a lot. I had at least one show at one venue, if not multiples at one time. And I was doing the show posters for all of them. And throughout that was really what got me. It was kind of my boot camp for Photoshop, and, my Vaudeville Phantom series, that very first image I did of Adam, which at the time was called Jasper. There's a whole evolution with that, but he was, really, I feel like that portrait was the first piece of artwork I ever did in Photoshop. And it was really just experimenting and screwing around. And, I still learn stuff all the time. I mean, they give you new tools and new things that you can do, or they'll change something, and it can be frustrating at times. I still go on YouTube now, like, okay, how do we do that? How do I do this? Is there a better way to do this? And, I had a roommate before. We'd both be on Photoshop. He'd have one way to do something. I'd have another way. We'd argue about what the best way was. We'd still come up with the same result, but it's just a matter of what you're comfortable doing, and there's things even in recent years that I finally learned how to do that have streamlined my process with stuff. And I won't even say what it is, because other people on Photoshop would be like, really, it took you that many years to like learn to do that? But it's true. There are simple things that, because I am self-taught, that I just didn't know how to do, and I just missed, or were just so incredibly frustrating. I just took the scenic route to get things done, and probably still do to some degree, like I never really jumped into Illustrator. There's certain things that I do that people are like, oh, you probably did this in Illustrator. And I'm like, no, I mean, I used to build websites in Photoshop, everything. I've used Photoshop for everything. So, I'm pretty confident that I'm good at it. There's still plenty that I don't know and that I could learn for sure. But I can't even imagine how many hours I've spent on Photoshop over the past over 20 years now, which is crazy to think. I didn't even consider that. But yeah, it's been over 20 years now. So
yeah, it's pretty much the Adobe suite. You can spend a lifetime just learning how to do any of those. So, Illustrator's the same way. There's just tons of things you can do and different ways to do it. And that's, obviously both Todd and I as photographers use Photoshop a lot. And you can do the same effect like 15 different ways. And
I know, it's crazy. Out the same.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's crazy. And that's what's so amazing about it. And I can't even imagine trying to go back to like Photoshop 7. It would be so frustrating to try and use that program, all the developments they've had over the years and everything. And, a lot of those, I'd like to know Illustrator better. I'd like to know Lightroom better, but it's like, I'm so busy constantly doing, I'd like to go to school, to be quite honest, and just learn more. But, I'm just busy actually creating art. So I haven't had time to really do that. And I'll learn things as I feel that I need them. Like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. And then I'll learn that tool like I did that I was talking about. And it's like, okay, now I know how to do that. And, when I learned it, I'm like, I use it all the time now, like all the time. And it's crazy that I never knew how to do certain things in Photoshop, and now I do. So it just streamlined my process so much. I don't think you would see a difference. I really don't think that anybody would see a difference, but it's just made things go quicker for me, for sure.
And that's the key. Trying to get out there and accomplish whatever you were accomplishing before, but do it faster so you can do other things or
sure. And tricks. And with my mixed media work too, I finally got to the point where it's like, I need to have a formula for what I'm doing, not only so that when someone sees one of my pieces, they know it's mine, but there is some sort of consistency and some sort of branding, but at the same time that I'm not constantly trying to come up with some new equation for what I'm doing. And not that I just want to pump these things out, but at the same time, there does need to be consistency. You do need to be able to look at one of my pieces and for the most part know that I did it, or everything's fluid and makes sense together in some way or another. And I feel like my Star Wars vs. World War II series, a lot of my digital art, I do feel you can tell that I did it, especially with mixed media, because I have so many embellishments and things that the black X in the corners and my Skull and Bones logo, and there's a lot of things that obviously connect all those pieces, but I do feel that that's important to have those things as an artist. You've got to be able to look at someone's work and know who did it, for the most part. And I just released my first abstract piece, and it's definitely different, but there's still those elements in there that I also put into the mixed media pieces that are there that connect them. And I did put some of the mixed media by the abstract painting, and I'm like, okay, this all works together. Like this could all hang on a wall together and make sense, which I feel is important, even though it's a different medium.
Yeah, you have continuity
Absolutely.
between your stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, bring that image back up, Todd. Do you want to talk about that one? That's a really cool one.
The Mickey Mouse image?
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. Let's do that real quick here.
It's one of the first images of the Star Wars vs. World War II series. I forget where at. I think it's in the first series. I'm pretty sure.
It's so well done, man.
Thank
so
you.
well done.
You can see all those stormtroopers in there. Those were initially, like I was saying, those were like just guys with mouse ears pulling that thing, and swapped them all out. That was just one element, putting the probe droid in there and just little things that are in the background. Like on the top of the building, you can see Darth Vader and the Emperor standing there. It's kind of hidden.
Yeah, on the left-hand side there.
Right.
Yeah. And you got the Death Star up.
Yeah.
Kind of screen back. On the right-hand side. I love this. It's just.
Thank you. It's one of the classics.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Like,
Thank you.
seriously. And I can't imagine, as somebody that's a photographer and just like you, I have certain tools in my toolkit. And if you asked me to do a certain thing, I may or may not know how to do it. Or if you watch me do it, you'd be like, oh my gosh, dude, why do you do it that way? Like, that's the most backwards way of doing it.
That's how my old roommate was. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's fine. Just this is how I do it. Leave me alone.
Right. And thank God for the era of YouTube, and you can go on and find somebody that has a tutorial on how to do something different or something you've never delved into before. But
yeah, absolutely.
It's
for sure. YouTube is great. I mean, I have watched so many tutorials on how to do things, even stuff that I'm comfortable doing. It's like, I still think there's a better way I could do this. I still think there's another way I could do this. There's got to be a filter or something just to like knock this out real quick. I spend way too much time doing certain things, and I have learned a lot, forgotten a lot that I've learned as well. But YouTube is such an asset for learning stuff on Photoshop or really any of the Adobe programs, for sure.
So where did this image start from? Like in your head, or did you see an image of like, a balloon like this? And then how did this all kind of come together?
I mean, basically it just was what it was. It was just that Mickey Mouse, getting pulled at the Macy Day parade. And then I just, it's like with any of the World War II images, I'll see something different and then just change it, take things away, add things in. And again, sometimes this is actually a pretty simple idea, but it was extremely tedious to actually make it happen. But I have thousands upon thousands of files from, Library of Congress and public domain images, especially with World War II, that I'll sift through them, and they'll be, if I see something, there's plenty of images that I've created that I'm like, yeah, I don't think this one's going to be a banger, and I'll just throw it off to the side. but then there's other time or images I just don't see anything. I don't see a way to change it. There's nothing I can do with this. And then years later I'll see it again, and then I'll have an idea and I'll do something with it. Um, and it'll end up being something really good. And of course, sometimes there's images that I've created that I think are going to hit really, really well with the people that follow the series, and then nobody cares. Or there'll, vice versa. There'll be ones like, I really shouldn't even release this one. Even the Galactic Samurai series, I was releasing it on Cyber Monday in 2016 for prints for the first series. And the night before, I was telling my assistant, my girlfriend at the time, I'm like, I'm not going to release these. No one's going to like this stuff. I'm like, I'm not releasing this. And they kind of pushed me they're like, just release it. It's actually really good. And it ended up being like one of our best sales days ever. And seppuku from that series is still to this day one of the best selling prints and t-shirts. So you just never, now I look at it and I'm like, I don't know why I would ever not want to release that. It is such a good image, but you just never know, what other people are gonna think or how they're gonna perceive it. Again, art's subjective. And but yeah, with this series, I don't even know how many images are in the Star Wars vs. World War II series. I think over 50, maybe over 60. I'm not sure. I haven't counted recently, so I'm not sure, but there's quite a few, and there's quite a few that are on deck that I just, again, it's like when I kind of have them started, and I'll look at them and like, okay, I need to finish this and put it out. And then I'll look at it again and be like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that one. So there's a whole folder of, yeah, I don't know about that one. So we'll see. Maybe I'll go through my files again and see a different image and have a different idea for it. We'll see.
I have a ton of photographs that way where they're in a folder and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'll ever get to anything. And I should go back and look at them because I'm sure something will like spark my process of creativity or whatever.
Yeah. And over time, the way you see things changes to some degree. And that's definitely happened for me with stuff where, again, there is definitely images that I've had in my files forever. And then I finally used it. And it's been one of the best, best selling prints that I have. It's like, why didn't I have this idea before? Like, what? I don't, this just seems so simple. Just even one image I have of the rain, it's called Escaped, and the Rancor is in the street and there's 3 soldiers like looking at it. And it's like, why have I never put the Rancor in any of these images? Why did it take doing 40, 50 some images to finally put the Rancor in an image? Like, I don't know why I never thought to not add that that creature into anything. So, but that's just how it happens.
Right, exactly.
So do you create images and sometimes you just like, they just sit for a while and you kind of like give yourself some space and then go back and revisit, see if there's either you like it, don't like it, or if you want to add more elements or get rid of elements? Is that the way it works with your process?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, sometimes if I have an idea and I just have all the confidence in the world with it, I'll just run with it. I think it was series 4, because I put them out in, prints of 4 for each series. And I think it was series 4. I had the 4th one pretty much done. And then I was taking a break and I was looking through World War II photos. And then I saw an image I had never seen before. And I was like, oh, it's the one, there's all the soldiers with bayonets pointing at one guy in the middle. And I, took that guy out and made it a stormtrooper. And it's been one of the best images of the series. But initially that wasn't going to be it. But I just knew, like, whether anybody likes this or not, I'm going to love this image and I'm going to create it. It's going to be the 4th one of series 4. And it's still to this day one of my absolute favorite images that I have.
That is awesome. When I was looking at your stuff, that was one of the ones that I really love. This one's called Captured for people that are looking for it. This particular one is on Billy's 13th floor website. If you go to 13thfloor.us, you can find it under the art tab in the Star Wars versus World War II series.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Have you always been a Star Wars fan? I take it that that must have been something that, resonated with you in your youth, and later on you figured out how to incorporate this imagery, melding like it's an alternative universe essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a Star Wars fan since I was a kid. Um, Basically how this series came about though is I was working on, really my digital art started off very more horror and more horror based, and much creepier. And I was working on my vaudeville Phantom series, and I would go through primarily images from the 40s, and World War II stuff would pop up all the time. And also at the same time, I was working on my Mona Leia piece. And that was just a random idea I had that I thought was clever that I'd create and people would enjoy. But I was just looking through images, kind of taking a break and just kind of to some degree giving my eyes a rest and getting away from both of those things because I was kind of bouncing between the two. And then I started running across more World War II stuff. And I just got bored and I'm like, this image, I could drop some AT-AT walkers into this and just see how it plays out. And it just fit so good. And that was my 3-on-3 piece, which is the first Star Wars vs. World War II image I did. And when I did it, I just posted it on Facebook that night just for friends, just kind of like a goof. And everyone loved it. And then they kept pushing me to actually print it. So I did. And then money was tight. And so I did another one. And then I did another and another. And then it just turned into what it did. The more I did, the more, the bigger the following got, for it. Because just based off of the first one, I mean, people liked it, but it didn't hit harder until I did more images and created more of a series out of it. And I mean, even the first convention I did was a horror convention, and I only had three pieces from that. Everything else was horror based. And but those sold the best, even though I was at a horror convention. The Star Wars vs. World War II stuff sold the best. And I just kept building from there, and it just turned into a thing, and I'm fortunate. I've had a following, and people collect the series and the shirts and everything for quite a few years now.
So have you gotten any flack back from Star Wars at all? Anybody, the people that own the franchise?
No, I mean, they're aware of it, but we've never talked about it. I've had people that, execs at Disney, at Lucasfilm, buy from me at conventions. My stuff is hanging in offices. I don't know that it's never been discussed. It's obviously appropriated. It's parody. 95% of the Star Wars stuff within that entire series are photographs I've taken of toys, and dropped them into actual photographs. And, all the stormtroopers, like in that piece with Mickey Mouse, with the balloon, those are all toys. Those are all from the Black Series, and I'll go in and Photoshop them and take out the pins and the joints and those things and, blend stuff so it looks more like an actual person, and there's some images that I got to Frankenstein it together. I've got to pose, they only do so many things, right, trying to pose them. So it's like, all right, well, I'll move the legs this way, I'll move the arm this way, the body, the head, and I've just got to piece it all, back together. Same with the ships. A lot of those are just little metal, like matchbox ships. They're very tiny, and photograph them, and same deal. I'll put textures on them and layers, and make it look more like actual metal and real, and smash up the windows, or whatever I have to do. There hasn't been any issues. I mean, at one point I was actually signed on doing artwork for Lucasfilm, and it was based off of the series that I do. You know, they essentially wanted me to take things from the original trilogy and create images in my style and make it look grittier, but like a different viewpoint or perspective of things that actually happened in the movie. It was very tricky. It was very, very tricky. And, you know, eventually it just, the situation just didn't work out. It doesn't mean that it won't be revisited at some point, but there were just things that didn't sit well with me, I guess, you know. Sure. And at the same time, there was so many people very upset that I had, because at the time I couldn't sell any of my parody stuff. So we were getting quite a few emails like, we're happy that you'll be doing official Lucasfilm Star Wars stuff, but what you did with Star Wars versus World War II was unique and something different. And, you know, so, and I completely understood that. And it was really surreal to be like, okay, I'm a Lucasfilm artist, you know, for the month and a half. And I was signed on through like another, there was like a mediator between us, but it was just really, it was bizarre. And to some degree, it just felt uncomfortable as well. It really did. And it just wasn't, there were so many things about it that just really didn't make sense for me. The one thing that I was told with Lucasfilm, and I don't know that this is true, and I've talked about this before, but apparently they used concept art for Rogue One. They used World War II images mixed with Star Wars, and I was told they used my imagery for it. You know, and I read that that's actually what they did. It doesn't mean that they didn't have their own concept artists just do that and had no knowledge of anything that I'm doing. But I had been told that they were using some of my artwork for it. And even when the initial commercials and things came out, people were asking me, like, are you, because a lot of the imagery just looks like stuff that you've done. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't think so. And then I, you know, saw a couple of the scenes and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I can kind of see where people are thinking that. I don't know that I would have thought that without someone saying it. I mean, Rogue One's one of my favorite movies out of the whole entire franchise. I would love to know that they used my artwork, you know, to some degree as concept art for that. I would be over the moon about it. You know, but I don't know if there's any truth to it. I do know that they used imagery like that. I just don't know if they used mine. So, but I'd like to think that they did.
Yeah, you're fine with it. So it's kind of this weird relationship. And I'd seen that post where you're talking about that you were going to get signed on as a Lucasfilm artist.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about that. So that was a short-lived thing that never really came to fruition because of different elements and
yeah, there was images that I had created. I was essentially just about done with, I think there was 3 that I had actually created. There was a lot of other ideas. And the other part of that was that I was also going to do, we had other things lined up. I was going to do posters for, because, you know, they had taken over Fox. So I was going to do a couple kind of variant posters for Edward Scissorhands. I was going to do stuff for Indiana Jones and the Alien franchise too. And so there was a lot of different ideas, even beyond, you know, Star Wars, that I really was excited to do that stuff as well. And, you know, again, maybe at some point it'll be a relationship that's revisited, but at that time it just didn't work out. So maybe, but I'm not eager to revisit that either. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's a tough thing with Star Wars versus World War II, because I mean, I do know that they're absolutely aware of it, but at the same time, I do try and respect the brand. I don't do anything that I feel is going to be disruptive to anything they're doing, or make it appear as though it's something that is Disney, Lucasfilm, Star Wars official. I don't even hashtag Star Wars and things that I, you know, post, anything like that. And this doesn't necessarily give me or anyone a free pass, you know, just to do whatever you want with, you know, copyrighted work. And there is a fine line with anything that you do appropriated. And, for sure, with all the pop art I do, it's for the most part all appropriated. So it's just, there is a very fine line. I'll do Comic Cons and see people doing like a straight up portrait of Darth Vader or something. And it's like, you're, you're walking on dangerous ground, doing stuff like that. You've really got to change it up and do something different with it and make it your own. That's what parody and appropriation is, but it's a slippery slope.
It's a
really,
slippery
really
slope.
tricky. It is.
And the bottom
sure.
line, kind of what you just said, like, it sounds like you've been very smart about it. Like, you don't want to draw attention to it. Like, you want people to appreciate it, which they obviously do, but
Right.
you don't want to bring any heat onto yourself. And so if you
No.
can avoid that in any way, like, not hashtagging Star Wars in it or whatever. And it
Yeah.
sounds like they're fine with what you do. They're not messing with you.
No,
Right.
I mean,
So,
they've even liked one of my posts at from the 13th floor page at one point. Organizers of Comic Cons that I've done, they've told me like, Lucasfilm is aware of what you're doing, and I'm like, and okay, like what?
Right.
Okay, so what's the conversation? And they're like, I don't know. They're just letting us know that they know, and that's it. I go, okay, great story. I don't know where to go with this.
right.
Like, do I need to worry, or are they cool with it, or where are we at with it? Why are you why even tell me this? Like, but that was, one conversation of many. But again, I've had people that work for Disney and Lucasfilm buy from me, religiously. So, and again, that doesn't necessarily give me a free pass just to do whatever I want. But again, I do feel that I'm respectful of the brand. And, I've had people ask like, oh, why don't you ever do Star Wars Celebration? And I'm like, if they invite me, that's one thing, but I'm not going to show up at the show and kick him in the balls, and here's all my appropriated parody stuff. I'm not trying to do that. If I'm invited, then yeah, of course I'd be there, but again, it's a slippery slope. And I feel that of course I'm biased, but I do feel that I'm on the right side of things, and being respectful and not trying to impede on anything that they're actually doing, or anything I'm doing is actually taking away from any of the billions that they're making, on the Star Wars franchise.
And you're not really you're using the imagery of Star Wars, but you're not appropriating it. You're using, you're doing the work. You're
Mm-hmm.
photographing toys, right?
Yeah.
That you purchase. It's your photography.
Yeah.
And then you blend these images seamlessly.
Thank you.
And make it your own. So it's not even
Yeah.
like you're like stealing images off the internet, like
No.
film stills or something like that.
No, yeah, no.
These are actually things that you've made up in your imagination, and combining different images from World War II and Star Wars, but
Yeah.
you're making them yourself.
Right. And I mean, some of the images like Spitfire chase, I built all the way from the ground up. The TIE fighters are toys, the World War II planes are toys. I think in that one, I know for Fangs Out, like even the aerial shot is a photograph I took out of a plane, in transit to one of the shows I was doing. That's another one that I built from the ground up. I took a photograph of a P-51, a Mustang that's at an air museum that's close by me, that they have outside on a big pole, and took a bunch of different angles of it, but it's an actual World War II plane, and photoshopped it into the image, with it shooting at and being shot at by TIE fighters. But the whole entire image I built from the ground up. So some of them, are literally completely all me. The majority of them, I do start with a World War II image. But there are some that, completely, and like the one with Mickey Mouse, that's not particularly a World War II image, just that era, and just me trying to kind of, tell the story. Yeah, that's Fangs Out. That plane, the hero plane, so to speak, is photograph I took at the Air Museum of a plane, and photoshopped off the post and added the 13, and you can kind of see my Skull and Bones logo on the side of it. And then, put the wing on fire and made it, the propeller look like it's moving, and bullets flying and gunshots and, all that, and that aerial shot too. I think the aerial shot is actually Puerto Rico. I don't, I don't remember exactly, but yeah, that's all. That one I built from the ground up.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I just, I can't imagine the work that goes into these pieces. I really can't. Like,
it's a lot. I mean, and the tough thing about these two is, and I've gotten it wrong at times, and the one benefit of having digital work is if you've collected my series over time, a lot of these pieces may have changed to some degree. Trying to get the sizing right on everything can be really tricky at times, and angles correct. And some of these that I've had to stare at for hours and days on end, you just miss stuff, and it starts to look right and it's completely wrong. I definitely try and, like, I don't release anything until at least I go back and look at it the next morning. And even then, there's some that it's taken me a year, like, oh, that's a bad layer. Like, nobody's really sees it, but I see it. It just looks like maybe a texture or cloud or something, or fog or whatever. But it's like, this is a bad layer. This is really bad. It looks fine, but I know that's not supposed to be there. So I'll take it out, and then, from there out, there'll be a better version of it. But it happens for sure. It's really tough to, a lot of times, to get the depth correct, the angles. And again, just the size, because you're dealing with things that aren't real, and even if you watch the movies and look at certain things, some of those there's different types of TIE fighters. And that's something that I learned over time too. And even with World War II, there's a lot that I've learned over the course of doing this, just names of things, and I do my best, and I feel that I am pretty accurate with anything that I put into these images from the Star Wars universe and World War II, because believe me, the people that follow the series or see it online will absolutely call me out. Like, there is no question about it that if I'm incorrect in one way or another, I will absolutely be butchered, for it. And that's only happened on rare occasions. And I mean, I guess a benefit to me to some degree, because like I said, I can go back in and change it and release it or whatever. But I try and avoid being, brutalized on the internet with the things that I do, especially with the series. And how Star Wars fans can be. They're very passionate, and it can get pretty gritty at times with how they feel about things. So I try and get everything right as best as I possibly can.
The one thing that blows me away is like the bayonet one with the stormtrooper in the middle. It looks so authentic. Like you blend those images together in a way that I'm really jealous, because that's got to be really hard, to get the look and feel of it correct.
It is. That image in particular, I got to be honest, like, I had the idea for it, and at the same time, to be honest, I wanted to show off my Photoshop skills a little bit with that one, to be able to remove the man that was in the middle. It was a stage photo, and his name is slipping my mind right now, but he would train all those guys how to disarm somebody with a bayonet. So they put him in the middle, and it was a stage photo. And I'm like, this is what a great photo. And I had never seen it before. I feel it's more of a rare World War II photo. And it's very grainy, the original. So I had to clean that up a lot. Even there's one guy in there that is looking at the camera. So I made it look as though he's not looking at the camera, because he was just ruining the whole entire vibe of the image. But I do feel that, I was trying to show off a little bit by putting that stormtrooper in the middle. And at the same time, I was very proud to make it look the way it does, and make it look seamless. So I absolutely appreciate you saying that. Like, it was a lot of work, but it did fall into place. Just the way I put him in there, it fell into place very, very well. But this one for sure is one of my favorite favorite images of the whole series, and by far one of the darker ones. It's one that on Instagram has actually been pulled down on several occasions for violence and, all the different things. And I've been flagged on Instagram a bunch of times for a bunch of bizarre things. Their algorithm and their bots or whatever that will analyze photos. They took down an image, or something or other. I forget what it was, because they said that I was trying to sell animals and weapons, and I don't know, it was just so bizarre. A coffee mug they flagged once for sex toys, and there's so many things that I've been in trouble for on Instagram, because my website's connected with the product. So if they feel something is in violation, they'll remove it, and I'll get contacted. That there's definitely been me selling animals, me selling weapons, selling sex toys. There was something at one point that made it almost sound as though I was trying to sell like humans or something. I don't know. It was really bizarre. But I just, I'll fight it, and then they'll be like, yeah, okay, it's just a coffee mug. It's not, you're not trying to sell an animal or a weapon. But
yeah, I think I've seen that image before. And the thing that really gets me is like, you get the film grain, look and everything. And that, that helps sell the whole idea that this is like an authentic photo, right? Because
sure,
I mean, they're blended so well together.
Thank you. Yeah. That's a big part of it. I've seen people try and mimic my series, or just, try and dump things in old photos. And it's like, this is so off. Like I can see exactly what you put in there. It's so crisp. You're putting something HD into a photo that's by far not, not HD. Like, it's very grainy. It's very old. And I like those photos. I love those photos. There's so much more character to them, and, but yeah, adding that grain and making sure that the grain and everything is consistent is extremely important to sell that, that's actually happening. And I have so many people that will ask like, oh, what's the original image? And I know that they're, I'd probably want to know too, to some degree, but it's like that takes away the mystique of it, or the magic of the actual image. If you see the original, it's like you're just kind of killing the illusion,
right,
to some degree.
Right.
And some images are absolutely famous. What the original image is.
Like, the flag raising on Mount Suribachi,
Yes, yeah, for sure. And that, because it's so, I was steering clear of doing this one for a while, but I had so many people that followed the series requesting that I do it, so I did it. It was one of the trickiest ones to do, to get because it's such an iconic image, to get all those stormtroopers positioned the right way. The file behind it, I have, there's people in that image that from this viewpoint, you really can't see them. Like, you can see kind of that darker arm hoisting up the flag, and it's very shadowed. In the actual image, it's really hard to see that there's another person back there, helping out, and just the way their legs are and everything. So, having the initial photo, I had to like figure out where all the different people actually are and what they're actually doing for their movements. It's very tricky. And with a grainy image like that, it's tough to figure out. Things blend together, people's pants or legs, everything's kind of, blending together. This was a really, really tricky image to do. And I thought it would be very simple. Like, everything's already there. I just got to photograph these guys holding this thing up and, change the flag out. This should be easy. This one was really tough for me to do. Maybe I could do it a bit better now, but at the time it was really, really tricky for me to figure out the position that all those guys were actually in, and make sure that they were separated and correct. It was really tough.
It's funny how that works sometimes, where you think something might, I think this will be pretty easy. And then you get into it and you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? It's like,
that was this image for sure. This was one of the toughest ones that I did in the whole series. It's such an iconic image. You can't screw it up, and this was another one, using toys that, like, that guy all the way to the right that's kneeling. Those toys don't move like that at all. I don't know how many different times, how many different pieces I photographed on that one, maybe 6, 7, 8. I don't know. to get him to actually, be in that position. The rest of them weren't too bad, but him in particular was a complete. It was a. It was very tedious to make that happen. But this image took quite a while for sure. And again, I might be able to do it quicker now, but at the time, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible.
So much so you don't want to even go back and revisit it.
Oh no, no. I really don't. I mean, I would, just to see if I could do it faster now or do it better, but no, I'm good. I'm even if I saw a way I could do this better, I know how hard I worked on it and how tricky it really was to figure out where all those guys, all those guys were actually positioned. Forget it.
Yeah,
another
really
thing
well done.
I think is extraordinary, and I know that this takes a lot of thought, is getting the lighting to look correct.
Oh my God.
In the photograph. So because that's something that, bad Photoshop, you see it all over the place. And,
oh yeah.
And, when you take different images, you got to match them up so that it appears that,
tricky.
It's from the same light source. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And you do it really well, man.
Thank you. And I'll tell you, that's something too. I've made mistakes. You get something done. It's like, yeah, the shadows are completely wrong on this in comparison to everything else. And I always think about the movie JFK when they're talking about the photograph of Oswald and how the shadows on his face show one time of day, but the shadows on the ground show a different time of day. I always think about that, especially when that movie came out and they were, kind of describing that was so creepy to me, that actually, I mean, that whole movie's creepy to me, but that they did that. But I think about that all the time when I'm working on this stuff. Yeah. Like with the lighting, like you said, it's so important. The grain is important. The lighting's important. The perspectives, the angles, all that stuff comes into play. It's so tricky to get all that stuff right. Sometimes I get it. Sometimes I just get it. And over the years, I've gotten pretty good at it, but mistakes still happen. Again, you're staring at something for so long, you miss things, and again, it's a digital file, so I go back and fix it, but I still try and get it right the first time around. But yeah, the lighting can be so tricky and so tedious to get right. That's, yeah, for sure.
So, talking about Iwo Jima and Mount Suribachi, I seen that you were invited by the Marine Corps to go to Okinawa.
Yes, I was. That was a crazy and great experience for sure. A couple guys that used to buy for me when I would do C2E2 in Chicago, he just asked me, he's like, we do a Comic-Con just one day on the Marine Corps base in Okinawa, and if you wanted to come out, and I was like, I would absolutely love to do that, and I was slammed the whole entire day. It was totally worth it. It was I was not prepared to be in Japan at all. The weekend right before it, I did New York Comic-Con, which is my biggest show of the year, and it's just a lot. It takes a lot out of you, and I had less than a day to get home from New York, unpack, repack, and get on a plane and fly to Tokyo. And flew into Tokyo, slept for a little bit, walked around, checked some things out, flew to Okinawa. That was a whole debacle. Apparently I needed papers to get onto the base and all these things that I was not told. And luckily, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this. I'm sure it's fine. But I made a friend at the airport who was the head of nuclear defense, and he got me onto the base. And I'd never been on a military base ever. So I didn't know what I was allowed to do, what I wasn't allowed to do. And especially because I didn't have papers, I was starving. I'm vegetarian, and a lot of the food in Japan, I'm like, I just don't know if I can have, I don't know if I can have this where I can eat. I was eating French fries at McDonald's most of the time. And I was starving when I got to the base, and it was like the middle of the night when I got there, which was a part of the problem. And so they had a machine in the hallway, and at the I have to eat gluten free now. At the time though, I don't know how many packs of Pop Tarts. That's all I had, like 4, 5, 6 things of Pop Tarts because I was so hungry. And the room I was in was metal. It was freezing, and I got a little bit of sleep. Got up the next morning, was able to get my stuff loaded in, got set up, and just from all the transit and everything, I was so tired. I slept for 12 hours straight in Okinawa. And the hotel I found a hotel off the base because there was such a problem. I'm like, I'm just going to stay off the base. And, there had to be a translator on an iPad. And that was another thing about Japan. Like, it's not like going to like Puerto Rico and they can just change it up real quick and start speaking English in Japan. That's not happening, and like I said, I was not prepared to be there. And when I was checking into the hotel, they kept making it very, very clear to me, you cannot have any guests in your room. I'm like, I'm not going to have any guests. I just want to sleep. I would just want to sleep. You cannot, no girls. You cannot bring no girls. Nobody, you bring nobody in here. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to bring anybody in here. I just want to sleep. I'm so tired. I'm ready to fall down. But they kept saying it over and over and over again. I don't know if there's like a prostitution problem around that hotel or what. I'm like, I am not going to bring anybody in here. It was the smallest room. It was nice, but it was extremely small, super, super small. The bed felt like cardboard. And I slept for 12 hours though. And then the next day went to the show, and, I was taking yen and American money, which was crazy. And super busy show. Everybody was so fortunate that I was there. And the image we were looking at of Iwo Jima, best-selling print. I probably should have brought 3 times as much. Sold like crazy, and it was so incredibly, absolutely worth it. It took me, I think, 2 months to get over it. Like, I could never get used to the time change while I was there. And then finally, like a week after I got home, I got used to Japan's time, and then it took me like a month to get back to Eastern time. I'm horrible with that, but it was such a great experience. I just wish that I could have had more energy and been more prepared to actually be there. But I was on that base for a day, like half a day to get set up and the next day to be there. But it was for sure an experience I'll never forget. And it was so nice having everybody be so fortunate, that I was there and like my stuff. And because I've had that question over the years many, many times, and not so much now. And knock on wood, me saying this doesn't jinx me, but when the series first got popular, I don't know how many people would just have so many horrible, awful things to say about me using World War II imagery and how disrespectful I was being, and just a lot of both bizarre stuff, about it. And both my grandfathers fought in World War II. By no means am I going to try and be disrespectful. I don't feel that I'm being disrespectful. I can also understand someone's perspective about it. But that was also a slight thought going to the Marine base. Like, is this going to be a mixed reaction? And if it is, at least I can apologize in person, I guess, to somebody. I don't know. Right. But it was great. Like, it was really great. And I, wanted to go back, and then I think they canceled it because of a storm the one year or something happened. And then my schedule got screwed up, and then we had the pandemic, and then, all that. So it just, I haven't gone back, but someday, I'm taking a break from Comic-Cons in general right now, but, I would love to go back. It was such a great experience, and everybody there was so kind and nice. And again, I had never been on a military base, so it was intimidating, to me. I didn't know. Like, I had no idea how to handle myself. Like, I got up the next morning and I took a photo out the window, and I'm like, oh fuck, I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. I shut the curtains. I'm like, is someone gonna snipe me? I'm like, should I delete this? I don't know if I'm allowed to do this. Like,
what base were you at? Or do you remember?
If I heard it, I would know. It was camp.
Like Schwab, or?
It wasn't Schwab.
Okay. Camp Butler?
No.
There's only like 18 of them. I mean, that whole island is nothing but a big military base. I was at Fatima, which is south of there, and that's the Marine Air Wing. So they have helicopters and C-130s and stuff, or at least in my day, maybe it's all changed now. But yeah, I can't remember.
I don't know. If I heard it, I would know it.
No, that's all right.
I feel like it's on the tip of my tongue. I feel like I should be remembering it. I can see the whole entire place in my head still, but I can't think of it. When we're done, I'll know. It'll hit me what the name of it was. I don't remember though. If I heard it, I would know. If I heard it, I would know for sure.
I don't even remember anymore. I remember Camp Foster, Camp Butler.
That's it. Camp Foster.
Yep. Foster. Yep.
Foster.
Yep.
That's the one. Yep. I wanted to say Floyd. That was like on the tip of my tongue. And I'm like, I know that's not right, but the F, yeah.
The whole hotel thing, I can tell you it's because it's a big military base and the Marines and sailors and Air Force have ruined it for you.
Okay. I figured it was something along those lines, but they were so adamant. I'm like, oh my, stop fucking asking me. I'm not going to bring, I literally just want to go to sleep. I'm going to sleep on the bench in the lobby. Please just let me get in the room. Your tiny, tiny, tiny room was so small.
So the next time you're there, go to Kadena Air Force Base and go to BC Street. That's, this is all probably changed now, but back in the day, the sewers ran underneath the sidewalk, and there was a bunch of clubs, and there was one called Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club, and it had big old TV. And this is 1984, big old TV, and they played rock and roll. First time I seen Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh, that's great.
After Randy Rhoads died, and it was the guy from Night Ranger played. So
really,
and
that's bizarre.
So anyway, it was just a crazy place, and BC Street, that was probably the ruin of Americans in Okinawa, staying at a hotel, just trying to be normal.
It was so strange being there because I was kind of expecting it to be Karate Kid 2.
Right.
I'm like, there's got to be a little shop where I can get one of those little drums, and I had got one like at Epcot Center when I was a kid, but I'm like, I want one of those little drums for Okinawa because of Karate Kid 2.
Right.
I feel like a goof even telling you this, but that is the absolute truth. That's what I wanted my souvenir to be. And where I was at anyway, first of all, it was overcast and rainy and windy as hell the whole time I was there. It was terrible. But where I was at just seemed extremely industrial, extremely run down, and really, really beat. It was just not what I wasn't prepared. And it was not what I was expecting at all. I was expecting like pretty beaches and things that I had seen on the internet machine. And though, that wasn't there. Or even, like I said, I wanted Karate Kid 2 Village. And I was not there. It was like a post-apocalyptic world that I was in, and it was very depressed. It was definitely very, it seemed very run down and just industrial. And there had been a storm recently, and I think it had done some damage as well. But and again, I was not prepared to be there at all. But it was not what I expected. And it's another reason I'd like to go back and actually have energy to go around and act. I mean, I'm in Japan, check out these different parts of Okinawa and things, but I didn't have an opportunity to do it. Tokyo, I ventured around a little bit more, but because I flew back to Tokyo after Okinawa. It was an experience.
The good beaches are in the north part of the island, the northwest side, if I remember right. And Okinawa is a big vacation place for mainland Japanese. So it's kind of like their Oahu.
Yeah. I mean, I just expected the whole island was like that. I didn't know, I didn't know. So, I wish I would have been a little bit more prepared,
So for that I knew this old sailor that was in World War II. They arrived at Okinawa after the surrender, and he said there was like no trees on that island. They had bombed the hell out of it so bad. So
I feel like where I wasn't seeing a lot of trees. The ones I did see were about ready to blow over. The wind was blowing so bad the whole time I was there. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it was very rainy and overcast. It wasn't a pretty situation at all when I was there. But it was a great experience and a great weekend, and everybody was so kind to me there.
Yeah.
Everybody was so kind.
I love the Star Wars versus World War II. I think that's a great series. I can't imagine why people would be offended by it. It's just a wonderful series. So kudos for you, because I think you did a phenomenal job. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, I've come to learn that no matter what I do, someone's going to get offended by it. My vaudeville Phantom series, I have my Elephantums, which are big elephants with skeleton paint on them, and I have the one elephant that's on top of a big ball that looks like a moon. And I had somebody go crazy online saying they were going to contact PETA, that I whipped the elephant to make him stand on the ball and all these things. And I said, to some degree, you're complimenting me because you think this is actually happening, but it's all photoshopped. It's an elephant I photoshopped on top of a ball. And and even with the mixed media stuff, I've used, mug shots of celebrities, and people, oh, it's so cool to be in jail, and like get mad at me because I'm using mug shots and I'm promoting cons. I don't know. Just it's so bizarre. It just doesn't matter what I do. Someone's going to be upset about it. So I just do what I want at this point.
The times we live in, man. Everybody's offended.
Everyone's offended. It's gotten a little bit better. Because Facebook and Instagram have cleaned it up. Like you can't, if you type certain things, they'll tell you like, this seems like you're violating something, or, whatever. So it has gotten cleaned up quite a bit, but I've definitely taken my fair share of abuse, through comments and stuff that people have said, over the years. And again, just being offended by things that are absolutely just not even real or happening is entertaining as well.
So can you talk a little bit about the vaudeville stuff? How did that come about?
That was, that was me teaching myself Photoshop. And I've always been into the older photos like that. And a place that I worked at, they would send us like disc of textures and images and things that you could use, like sample packs of stuff. And the one that we had, it was like an old timey pack. And that's when it was like a portrait of a family, and I cropped out the kid, and then, was just screwing around with pretty much like the liquify tools in Photoshop for the most part, seeing what they did and smoothing things out, and stamps. And, with him, just ended up removing the mouth and kind of removed one eye, made one eye bigger. And it just went from there. And I mean, the initial portrait of one of those guys is definitely creepier than where they ended up. But I just kept creating more and more images of them. And I do have a story behind them, and the story has changed. And I have a friend that's very, big in the paranormal world, that we've talked about collaborating and actually making it a thing. It's been too many years since we've talked about it since, but, we just both get so incredibly busy. And I want to create more images. I actually hired a effects artist to sculpt the head, where instead of just photoshopping those eyes and the face and the way those look, that a lot of times now I'll just photograph the actual sculpt that I had him create, and then I'll Photoshop that on top of the face and morph it so, the bone structure and those things are correct. But there is over course of time, doing image after image after image of that series, it started to create its own story, kind of like Star Wars versus World War II. There's little things like the newspaper ones I do in that series. There's little tidbits of articles on there that I've written that kind of give you a little bit of insight into what's going on, like what actually happened. And with the vaudeville Phantom series, it's more just straight imagery. And I've had so many people ask me, like, are they aliens? Are they this? Are they that? Like, what are they? And I just haven't I know what they are, but I haven't let anybody into that yet. And I do think the story that I have for them is solid. And of course, over the years, like I'll see a new TV show or a movie, and part of the storyline will be maybe an idea that I had. And it's like,
oh, really?
Damn it. Now it's going to seem as though I snagged that or did this. So I might have to tweak it or alter it a little bit so it doesn't seem as though I'm copying,
Right.
another idea. And, at the same time, with my buddy, he is very heavy into comics and all that stuff, which I'm not. And that kind of helps me stay in line too. Like if I have an idea, it's like, yeah, well, they did that in so and so or this or this. So for the most part, my ideas have been pretty much my own, and they're not going to conflict with anything, anything else. But I don't know. Maybe someday I'll be able to actually tell their story, or maybe it's better I just keep it mysterious and
Right.
People just kind of make their own story for them. I'm not sure.
Sure. Well, I would love to read the story because they're really interesting. And what's funny is I look at those pictures of the smooth face and the big eyes, and it reminds me. My granddaughter was over a couple of weeks ago, and we watched Creeped Out, and the little character at the beginning, it's a mask that he's wearing, but it's just eye holes and a mouth hole and nothing else. And I saw that, I'm like, oh my god, It's just like Creeped Out.
Yeah,
so, but he has a mouth hole, so it's totally different.
Sure,
and it's
totally
a mask,
different.
and it's not their face. Like this one, you even have the skeleton of one of the and it's just like that's how the skeletal is. So it's really cool.
Well, and I started thinking about their anatomy and like what their bone structure would look like, and that's why I did that piece. And there's other things that I've written down and thought about too, just how do they breathe and how do they eat and how do they do all these different things. And I have a whole narrative and dialogue for all those different aspects of their anatomy as well, and a scientist might be like, yeah, no, that ain't right. that couldn't happen, but that's something too I would probably explore, but if they're alien or whatever, I decide that they're going to be, I mean, I pretty much know what they are, but just the way they eat and the way they breathe, if it would be completely utterly incorrect and I'm just going to get ripped apart for saying this is how they breathe, then I'd probably change it. But I feel like I have a pretty good idea of how they breathe. I just don't know.
I think they're really cool. Sense. I think it's so unique. I haven't seen anything like it, and I really like it. So it's cool.
Yeah, they're almost they're getting close to 20 years old now. I think the first one I created was in 2004, 2005, definitely by 2005, but it might have been 2004. And it's crazy that like I said earlier, that first portrait I did of one of those characters to me is my first real piece of art I created with Photoshop for sure. And maybe if I went through all my files, if I still had all of them, maybe there's something that would be like, well, no, this is actually your first one. I feel that's the first piece that's actually that I put out into the world and that I feel is a completed image that, is something I did in Photoshop. That wasn't a show poster, wasn't just putting text and things together, but this was an actual piece of art. So that's where they came about. Nice. Me teaching myself Photoshop, basically.
That's beautiful. I love it.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a cool series. And I will say I definitely get creeped out. There's something about not showing a mouth or not having a mouth that's creepy, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, and how they would communicate. And I've thought of, about that too, from a film aspect. Like if they don't talk, how do I make them communicate? And I've got a whole thing about that too. But, I've watched plenty of movies, where there's really no dialogue, but it still can be extremely creepy. You can still see communication. You can still see emotion and see what's going on. And, I know how they communicate with each other, communicate with other people, but, I think it's creepy too. And just the way they do communicate is even creepier. So.
Well, you either have to make the movie or write the book or do the graphic novel. I'm like sitting on the edge of my seat waiting.
Yeah, I there's a lot of people that really want me to do that. And I do like the story that I have and how they just who they are, you know, who how they function and how they hold themselves and the whole thing. I think would be really good. And I do have like, you know, if it was like a series, I do have some years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I did, you know, I downloaded like Stranger Things, their Bible for their series and how they put it together and how they pitched it. And, you know, I haven't taken it lightly. Like it, you know, talking to my friend Aaron Sagers, you know, I really researched how I would pitch this and how I would do it as a series, because I think that there's a bigger story that needs to be told outside of just like a movie or something. And just how I would pitch it, you know, and try to set it up the correct way to have that Bible to give to, you know, a network and say, this is who they are. This is what I want to do with it. And I, you know, I do have scenarios and interactions, and I don't know, maybe I need to go back to that. The more I talk, I don't want to like give anything away of it, but yeah. I do think the story would be, again, I'm biased, you know, but I think it would be somewhat compelling. And I would love to see those characters actually move, you know, and function and interact with people. And I think that would be surreal for sure. But you know, I would love to see that happen at some point.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, people keep telling you that they are interested in what's going on with these, right? So yeah. I guess that's the proof of the pudding right there, that people are so interested. They're like, they want to know more about it, or they want to, like, Wes, you know, you want to see it in some kind of other form, you know, where you're telling that story.
It's almost like I'm going backwards with it. Like I started with the merchandise and now we're going to put out the actual thing, you know, because I've had people that want because I would take the head and the bust with, like, you know, dressed up with a hat on, and I would have it at a lot of Comic-Cons, and people would take photos with the character, the older version of Adam. And people kept asking me, like, you need to make this into a mask and sell it and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I'd love to do that. That's also very pricey to do. You know, I know what I spent on the 2 sculpts that I have, let alone to, you know, do a mask and then have it reproduced and, you know, the whole thing. Like, there's so much I'd love to do, but everything, you know, also costs a lot of money that comes straight, you know, from me. You know, that stuff can be tricky, but it's always in the back of my mind, their story. I have so many things written down. I do keep, you know, the notes with me when I travel quite a bit. You know, my notes, even on my app, I have a whole thing that, you know, if I have an idea, I'll just, you know, jot it down. I haven't looked at it in a while, and maybe I need to, but yeah, those are my babies for sure, because that's like the first thing. Like I said, to me, that's really like the first piece of art that I did digitally anyway. I mean, I've done art my whole entire life, but that to me is like, you know, started a whole new era. And in a lot of ways, it's what, you know, helped launch Star Wars versus World War II, you know, and other things that I've done. It's really those Phantoms characters are very, very important to me. Those are my kids.
Well, it's part of your evolution, right? Like you just said,
absolutely.
You know, it's
so important.
One idea, you know, seeds another idea, and that grows into something, and then another seed gets dropped and planted and starts to grow, and it's a whole other thing. So we've talked really about 2 of the 3 series that you're really known for. The Vaudeville Phantoms, Star Wars versus World War II, and then
Galactic Samurais.
And people, I know so many people that are into the samurai thing. Yes. And this series, I think, is brilliant as well. Like,
thank you.
This particular image that I'm going to pull up right now.
Makanai. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's Imperial Bajo there.
I love it. I mean, it's just, that is amazing, man.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what, there's a show that's done. It's been done multiple times in different forms by artists that we know around Denver. I will hands down say that, you know, there's some cool art in those shows that they put on.
Sure.
But your Star Wars art is over the top, man. It really is.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, I I try and keep it different. I mean, I've been doing the Comic Cons and that stuff for years and years. Really, like Star Wars World War II is something that I created even before I started doing that stuff. And then, I found where I fit in to sell it and promote it. And Galactic, at one point it was like, okay, I got to do something else. There's got to be something else that I do. And I was doing a show in Canada, and I was already pretty interested in the Bandai figures that mix, the samurai with Star Wars. And then I saw somebody cosplaying one of these stormtrooper samurais, and it just hit me. I'm like, okay, this is where I need to go next, because it's different, because a lot of people would kind of say, oh, you need to do the Civil War, you need to do this war, right. Vietnam, which I absolutely am not touching Vietnam. Like, if I want to piss people off, that
would be Vietnam. The war to like, yeah.
Oh my God. I've had other people like, oh, you should do something with 9/11. I'm like, are you crazy? Yeah. Like, I'm not doing anything with 9/11. But I felt like this was something so different, and it hit a whole nother genre, and kind of, to a degree, there's so much light on anime right now that it definitely bleeds over into that vaguely. But it's been fun. It's also tough to find imagery. I do use imagery from old samurai movies. Some stuff I've built from the ground up. The main image, seppuku, I built from the ground up. Everything in there. There's even another image when I was in Japan that I took a photo, and that is the background of the one image, which I thought was fun, because it's actually a photo I took in Japan, and that's the background. But it is a tricky series. I don't have as many ideas for it as I do with, there's not as much imagery out there as there is with World War II. But I definitely want to explore doing more with Galactic Samurai as well. Like, it's a fun series, and a lot of people really, enjoy it as well. But there's definitely not as many images as the other series, for sure.
Yeah, you almost have to find imagery from, like you said, old movies, because the whole idea of the samurai and that system had kind of gone away by the time that cameras were fully in use, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like photography was a thing. The samurai,
right. The one image that I have called Dojo-ba, where Yoda's in the middle.
I love that one. I love that one.
That is actually real samurai.
Yeah.
At least from everything I've researched, it's real samurai. I haven't seen anything to tell me any different with it. And he just dropped into there so perfect. There wasn't a lot. I wanted to do something a little extra. So the wording on the background was initially stuff written in Japanese. So I swapped it out for Arabesh, and it says, "May the Force be with you" in the background. A lot of people kind of miss that that little detail. But this is definitely a very, very popular image in that series. I would say this one's probably number 2. Seppuku being the most popular image in the series, and this one I would say is 2. And it's one of those as well that, like, I'll have it at shows or something, and I definitely, with Galactic Samurai and Star Wars World War II, try and keep things subtle. That one I built from the ground up. That's seppuku. That's the best selling one.
That's an amazing image. Amazing.
Thank you. That was one of the ones I'm like, I don't know how people are going to feel about this. And it to this day, it's still one of the best selling images. And, I used a figure on that one. That was another one I had to photograph many, many, many times to get it to, be in that exact position, that they're in. And again, lighting and perspective and all that kind of stuff came into play, especially because I'm building it from the ground up. And, that was tricky as well, for sure, with this one, but I'm very happy with, how it turned out, for sure.
Yeah, that's very good. I like that one a lot. I didn't realize you built that from ground up. I would have just assumed you did the same thing. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean the initial image of Japan in the background was very, it was a color photo, it was bright, it was crisp, 4K image, and just, you know, kept beating it up so that it matched essentially Dojo Ba, the other one with Yoda in it. Because that is an authentic photo, and just making it look as beat and grainy and old, and kind of those, a lot of those images just kind of have almost like a smoothness to them, like a blur. The depth of field is always kind of varies to some degree, and at the same time, a lot of those cameras seem to, especially with the World War II photos, move. It's not just a blur. There's a motion. There's like a motion blur to a lot of that stuff too. If you really, really close, those cameras really couldn't handle movement or motion at all without it there being some sort of blurriness to certain edges and things, and that's a little trick you have to look out for too, with a lot of these older photos.
Yeah, you had a lot of factors involved in that. Older cameras, the optics weren't ultra crisp, so you got kind of a softness to it. Film stocks, they didn't have fast film stocks back then, so it was slow shutter speeds a lot of times. If the light wasn't great. And so there's a lot of factors. Like you've observed, in trying to composite these images, that you got to be aware of all that, right?
Yeah, totally. And I'm not a photographer. I'm not. I don't know technical things with photography at all. So it's really, doing all this stuff has really just been about observation. I have done things, and it's like, I'm doing this right, still just doesn't look right. It still just doesn't, and it could be, like you were saying, a shadow, or the grain could be off, or the lighting, or, there's so many factors, especially with those old photos like that. And like you said, the cameras are different, and, trying to make, because most of the photos I've got a good camera, digital camera that I used quite a bit, but really my phone is absolutely sufficient. You want to start with a clear image for the most part, but I'm just going to beat the shit out of it anyway, and and dumb it down and blur it and grain it and make it look dirty and everything else. So, but I still think it's good to start with a crisp, clean image, so that you're doing all that, and it makes it, I feel it streamlines the process to some degree, and helps you match up to an older photo, but yeah, all those factors are so important to get right when you're trying to do photo manipulation, especially this dumping, new images with old, and vice versa. And, it can be really tricky.
Yeah. It's an awesome series, man. Like,
thank you. Really thank you.
And this is one of the beautiful things about actually talking with the artists, is you get so much more insight into, what's going on with these series, as opposed to just, viewing it online or what have you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, and that's the thing too. Like I do want someone just to look at these images and not think about everything we're talking about. I just want you to believe that it is what it is. What you're seeing is real, and that's it. But it is nice to talk about these things. Like I said, when I've had people approach me and like, oh, it's just Photoshop shit. It's like, yeah, I just don't tell Photoshop what to do. And again, we've got AI that can kind of do that now, but still it's there's a craft to it, for sure, to get these things, correct. And it's a lot of work, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Absolutely.
Anybody who says it's just Photoshop stuff obviously doesn't know Photoshop.
Yeah, so. They don't use Photoshop. Yeah. They have no idea what's going on.
And I've told people that. I'm like, okay, well then get Photoshop and you do it.
Yeah, right, like, exactly.
It's not as easy as it looks, and that's the thing too. When a lot of things look simple, it's because there's so much hard work that goes into it to make it look simple. Right. It's not that easy. At all. And it's like that with music too. I mean, I've have friends that play one genre and maybe talk shit about another genre. And it's like, hip hop might sound easy, but it's not, like these are, it might sound simple, but when you're basically only hearing three or four things sticking out, they all need to connect the right way. They need to move the right way. And it's just with anything, simplicity can be very, very difficult to achieve,
Yeah.
But some people don't understand that.
No, most people don't.
Yeah.
So I want to take a moment. I want to rewind, and I
Sure.
want to talk about, you kind of talked about like where your journey began in this avenue, what we've been talking about, these different series. But I rewind and talk about like, your beginnings in art. Were you somebody that drew or painted or did anything like that as a kid?
Yeah, I think, as a kid, I was always known for just drawing, in general, and just being proficient at it, and I enjoyed it. I did it constantly. Like ever since I was a little kid, I drew everything. I remember in first grade, I drew a picture of ET, and I showed it to the principal at school, and he thought I was giving it to him, and I wasn't. I just wanted to show him what I did. He ended up gluing it in a book, and I was very upset because I was just trying to show it to him. Anyway, but I always drew from a little kid, and my grandfather worked at Superior Meats, a local meat company, and when they had to do orders, they had these huge order pads. I mean, they were huge, like 16 by 20, 18 by 24, these order pads, that you would just all their products on this one monster page. At least that's how I remember it. I mean, if there was one in front of me, maybe it wasn't that big. That's how I remember it. It was huge to me. And I would use the backside to draw on. And I used to make these robots. And I would do like the head, I'd do the body, the arms, and then I'd tape it all together. So it was one big robot. And I don't know how many robots I used to make. But those are the earliest things that I remember doing. And that was when I was very, very young. And I just always continued to draw and draw and draw. And then it just got kind of, I don't know, I guess boring. I didn't know what to draw anymore. Like I never really had an idea of what I wanted to draw. And it just kind of, I felt like moving towards Photoshop and getting a computer. And, I remember telling my dad, I'm like, I'm going to get a computer and learn this. And within 2 years, I'll be doing something with it. It took a little longer than 2 years, but I just felt like that was the direction that I needed to go. And now, ironically, I've kind of, and not that I've gotten bored with Photoshop, but I've just needed to change things up again. And it's just nice to be able to, like, when I do the mixed media stuff, get up and move, and move around and be a little bit more active rather than just continuing to sit and just let out sometimes just like letting out aggression too, and getting up and being able to, hammer in all those pieces and slash it up with a razor and spray painting and writing on it. And, it's just nice to be able to change things up. So, but, over the years, whether I'm doing a show poster or I'm doing textures on Star Wars vs. World War II or Vaudeville Phantoms, I feel like I've learned so much and be able to experiment and try so many different things, especially with texture and with composition, just from a digital standpoint. I can constantly change things, like this texture doesn't work. And so now I can try this one, or this graininess isn't working. So I can try something different. And I feel that I've taken all those things and I do it organically now, with the mixed media, but I also, it's taught me a lot, on how these things should look, or how I want them to look in the end. And so it has come full circle in a lot of ways. And, my grandfather was a sign painter and very talented. The precision he had with doing this lettering and gold leafing and all the things he did. And he was just a good painter in general, illustrator. But I used to sit in the garage and watch him for hours and hours and hours. And we only ever did one piece together. I had a skate deck, and there was a skateboarder at the time that did like a parody of the Chiquita symbol. And I'd always take the Chiquita stickers off the bananas at the grocery store. I don't know why, but that was just what I did. And I had a bunch of them and I stuck them everywhere. And so I just wanted to actually put the Chiquita symbol on the bottom of a skate deck. So he mapped it all out. And just watching him too, there was so much ASMR, back then. Not that there was a name for it, but there was so much of that. Just watching him, that was the one piece of art that we did together. And I have the skate deck hanging in my kitchen, and the where he mapped it out. I don't know what you want to call it, but like the wax paper and everything, I have that framed. It's in my kitchen as well. But it's funny because when I'm working on the mixed media stuff, it very, very much reminds me of my grandfather, and what he used to do with the sign work. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel a pretty big connection to him, when I'm doing that. I feel that what he did, the stuff he did there was so much precision involved. Mine is much, more about destruction, I guess, and not as clean. But I do feel a bigger connection, working on that stuff. And, I do everything in my basement. My basement's actually pretty big. So I feel like I'm in my grandfather's garage, to some degree. But, and I still like to, even with the mixed media, I'm still setting all that stuff up digitally. So I've needed all that knowledge of Photoshop, even for my promo for, doctoring photos, even taking photos of the artwork. And, I take these photos, I still got to dump it into Photoshop and clean it up and get the tones right and all that stuff. I take photos in the basement and they always end up looking very, they just look too warm. These things are much more stark black and white, and I've always got to clean that up and change it. So, everything has helped everything else, in one way or another. And, even working on this abstract piece I just did, it's all painting. There's no printing, there's no Photoshop, there's no anything, but I still feel like working on show posters for years and working with Photoshop and setting things up and composition again, and even the mixed media, working on texture and just how paint falls on things and how it dries and how when I spray paint, how it drips and all those things. Like I've learned over the years, like help me to do the abstract pieces too, so I think everything feeds off of each other. And that was always something. I had a corporate job years ago, and I would write all day during this job. I was on the phone. So I would just write all day about, I was mainly focused on music at the time, but it's like, I still want to do art. So how can the music help the art and the art help the music? And how I want to do a clothing line, and how can all these things feed off each other and help each other, but be separate entities, but still work together. And I would write the same things over and over and over and over again. And who knows what the hell I was writing back then, but it's what I'm doing now, and I'll come up with something new, and, everything does feed off of each other. And it would be difficult to come up with something that didn't work with something else that I'm doing. I feel like everything needs to be an extension or somehow help something else that I'm doing. That's the only way it would make any sense for me, or to even, validate me taking the time to do it. That's why I don't do music so much anymore. I'd love to, but as soon as I start working on it, the whole day's gone. I haven't made a dime off of it, and I'm not going to. I love doing it. It's nice to have the escape, but I don't have an addiction to alcohol or drugs or anything like that. But I do have addictions to ideas and being creative. So if I started working on a song, I'm going to work on it and see it through. If it takes me a week, 2 weeks, whatever. And that's scary. That's why I try and stay away from writing music until I have an opportunity to actually do it with not feeling guilty that I'm taking away from creating artwork, if that makes sense.
Totally. It's all part
So
of the evolution, right? And
yeah,
it all informs one work informs the next work, and having that connection. So have you always been like this since you were a kid? Like you just felt like you had to do something, you had to be
always,
making something? Yeah.
always. And it's something my dad would get mad at me too. Like, I mean, I would walk to the video store and I'd rent movies all the time, and there was a day my dad was literally like, you don't have to draw or do anything else while you're watching the movie. Just watch the movie. Can't you just watch the movie? And I would plenty, but it was always like I need to be working on something. It just compels me that I have to be doing something on top of what I'm doing. And it's something for sure that I struggle with now, that it's very hard for me to have downtime, and I always feel guilty if I'm watching a show or anything. And I want to keep up with pop culture by all means. Like, I'm a pop artist, so I need to know what's going on, especially when I do like a Comic-Con or something. Like especially when I was working with like Norman Reedus, I need to know everything that's going on with The Walking Dead, because someone's going to say something to me and I'm not going to know, and they're going to let me have it. I need to know what's going on, especially with Star Wars. I need to keep up to date for sure. But I also feel like that's me justifying taking the time to watch those things, whether I want to or not. It's very, very difficult for me to have downtime. I recently went to New York City and I didn't have a show. I didn't have any business. I didn't have anything. And it was great, and I'm like, I'm not going to feel guilty. I absolutely deserve to go to New York City and spend some time with friends for 3 days. I still made it I still handled some business. I met with a gallery owner. I'm going to end up doing a group show at Gallery in Manhattan in August. I ended up leaving that Darth Vader portrait in Central Park and promoted that online. Just, it was a free piece. Whoever got it first, it was theirs. And so I did that, which, is still kind of business oriented, but it's really, really difficult to, I do love what I do. So I'm always thinking about it, and I think that's one of the reasons it's difficult to take myself out of it. I have so many different ideas and things that I want to create and accomplish that, I mean, I know there's not enough time, and I can't really get help. I could, I know there's bigger artists that have like teams like Warhol did that just create everything. I don't feel right about that at all. Like, I feel like I need to be the one actually creating this. There's plenty that I do that I could probably have like a assembly line of people, help me with the mixed media work to get to the point where there's so much work that goes into creating those pieces before I actually embellish it or distress it or do anything. There's a process to get them to where they are. But I always feel like I need to be working on something, which is good and bad. It's very hard for me to unwind. Lately, it's been very hard to stay asleep at night. My brain is constantly moving, and especially if I maybe have an idea and I haven't figured it out yet, like it's just going and going and going and going. So that is definitely a tough thing for me to shut down, and just not. I'll definitely go out and hang out with friends and have fun, but it is somewhat far and few between. On the weekends, for the most part, I had plans to put ferrets in my pants this weekend, but it doesn't sound like the thing to do, so I'm going to back off from that. But
well, if I'm ever in Ohio, we'll do it together.
Okay, well, there we go. Yeah, I need a professional with me on that one. But I look forward to. I mean, I work on artwork all week, all the time. But I feel like on the weekends, there's not as much going on with emails and stuff like that. A lot of businesses shut down, so it does give me more time to just like take the whole entire day and focus on creating something new or being experimental or whatever. And I have such a long list of the things that I want to do and ideas that I've had for a couple years now that there's a sculpture I want to do that I haven't even, I have a prototype of it that I built out of cardboard and I look at it all the time. And I actually want to create this thing, and I need to do it, so it's stuff like that. Like, I'm going to take time to watch a movie, but I could really be working on that sculpture, and put this out there to the world that I think people would, enjoy it. Not to mention, it's something that I need to do, but doing laundry and cooking for myself and keeping the house clean and playing with the cat and all those things, take time as well. It's just, I feel like the days just, they go by so quick. But I try and get as much done as I possibly can. And there's always administrative things that need to be done, fires that need to be put out. I can't tell you how many things that it's been an issue for a while now. You just, I don't know, you order something and then it's wrong, and then you got to fix it, and then you got to fix it again. And it's just, that takes up time. So all those things get in the way too. It's not always just me. There's all those things that have to be done too. But yeah, long story short, it's hard. It's hard for me to shut down, for sure. My brain is always on the move. Always. It's very difficult.
I think artists that are successful in creating work that's meaningful, they're, you kind of are all wired the same,
Yeah,
I think you kind of have to have that thing,
Yeah.
And it's interesting to hear that from different people, like what compels them to create and make things, right?
Yeah. Too, at the same time, it is a mental health thing, I believe, as well. For me, when I'm not creating, I even have a tougher time sleeping at night. I really feel like I'm really wasting time in a pile of garbage when I'm not creating. I definitely feel better. It's nice to have sales as well, but at the same time, I feel so much better after I create something or after I've worked on something. And by all means, hopefully I'm happy with it too. There's definitely times I'll work on something and get done with it. And it's like, this is just terrible. Like, this was just an absolute waste of my time. And I have plenty of those files too. But there was a time, a long time ago, I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I lived with my buddy, and I worked in the stock room at the Express, or the Limited at the time, Express. I don't know. And it was day after Thanksgiving, which is a huge shopping day. And I stayed up all night drawing and went to bed pretty much the time that I was supposed to get up and go to work. And I just didn't go to work that day. And I got fired, which I knew was going to happen. It was pretty much me quitting, because I'm not going to go on the busiest day of the year. And I didn't feel bad about it at all, because I stayed up all night doing something that I loved, and I was drawing. So I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel bad about it. It set in like I need a job because I'm broke, and, money, rent and those things need to be paid. But that was kind of an enlightening moment, though, for me as well, was that this is, to some degree, this always needs to be a part of my life and a part of my path, that this is what I should be doing. And this is what makes me feel it's just what I should be doing, by all means, art in some form. And even when I focused on music for years, it's still an art form. I still feel like I was creating and, doing my thing. And it's funny, once I started doing art again, so many people didn't even know that I was an artist. It didn't realize that all the artwork I did for the band or for the show posters, the production company I had, any of that, I was doing all the artwork. I would go under different names, so it didn't seem like it was all me. This was Impale Design. The production company was one name. Everything was a separate name. So that's why, like, on a lot of my early artwork, it still says Impale Design. And, finally I started just using my own name, but that was like my freelance design name for a long time, was Impale Design. I didn't want everything to be in my name. It just seemed like so, not arrogant, but like it wasn't a real thing or something. I wanted other names to be associated, so it seemed like this was more legitimate. I don't know. Maybe that was the wrong idea, but it all worked out in the end. But I always feel like I need to be creating and trying to move forward with ideas and projects, and I stay busy for sure.
Tenet wants to acknowledge our media sponsor, New Magazine. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine, and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. And I want to share with you something very exciting. Check out the newly launched New Denver Gallery Guide. Look for the signage that says New Denver Gallery Guide that has a QR code. Scan it with your phone, and you have instant access to a comprehensive digital guide to Denver's finest galleries and exhibitions. Find this QR code in your favorite gallery, hotel, or coffee shop as you visit and explore Denver. Thanks for listening.
This is Billy Ludwig, and you're listening to the Tenet Podcast.
You touched on music multiple times since we've been talking, and I know that you were in multiple bands, punk and industrial bands. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I was reading an article, an interview with you talking about a house party that went kind of awry or sideways.
Which one?
Which one?
This one, like a full-on fight broke out.
Oh.
Like it was like,
Yeah.
and it sounds like there was some damage to that, serious damage to the house.
There's damage to people, the house. My buddy had a big party on Akron's campus, and we played in the living room. And this is when I was fronted a hardcore punk band, and I was young. 19, 20 probably. And I was pissed off all the time. And in between songs, I just was speaking my mind and getting the crowd really riled up. And so they start moshing and slam dancing, and it just turned the wrong direction, and people got extremely violent and started getting in fights. And it was a big party, and the fight broke out inside. I mean, my guitarist, one of his guitar pedals, the whole corner of it got ripped off. Our PA got knocked over, drums got ruined. I know there was a lot of equipment that got ruined. My buddy's couch, the whole arm got ripped off the couch. Like the whole armrest was ripped off the couch. Their front porch, the front porch got ripped off the house. It was ripped off the house because everybody poured out onto the front porch and just, hit the railing, and then it just ripped off the house. People were punching each other. My girlfriend at the time was there. I just covered her up and drug her out of there. I'm like, just run, just go. The cops were coming. There's tear gas going everywhere, blood everywhere. And it was just crazy. It was just a crazy night. It was a really great party up until all that. It changed so fast, with the people. It just went the wrong direction for sure. And that was a big fight. I mean, there was so much blood. There was blood everywhere. There was blood on the house. I had friends that were beating the shit out of each other. I'm like, why are you guys fighting? Like, you guys are friends, but they fought. And it was insane. And then I remember this guy. Oh, I don't even want to do this impersonation, but I'll do it. This guy said to me after the show, like after we played, or maybe maybe we took a break in between sets. And he was like, he's like, you crank when you jam and you jam when you crank, man. He's like, I think you suck, but my friends would love you. I just looked at him and I'm like, okay, I don't know. I guess that's a compliment. I don't know. Thanks. We suck. Okay, great. You crank when you jam and you jam when you crank. I don't know. I was like, okay. Okay. It was a bizarre night all the way around, but yeah, that was a big, yeah, yeah, that was definitely one of the shows. A big fight broke out. Yeah.
That needs to
That
be a
whole crowd.
t-shirt.
Yeah, that should
What's
be a
that?
t-shirt.
It needs to be a t-shirt. You crank when you jam.
You
You
could
jam when you
incorporate
crank.
that quote into one of your pieces, right?
Oh, it's
Got to figure
yeah.
out where it goes.
It's so bizarre. You know, when I was working on my book, I had to cut a lot of stuff out, and I had a whole section that was going to be the wall of hate. I had saved all these nasty things people had said to me online, and I was going to put them throughout the book, like, you know, and even to promote it, instead of like, you know, good reviews, I was going to put all these hateful things people had said to me online as the reviews of why you should buy the book. I'll probably do another edition of it at some point and add all of those things in, because there's a lot of funny stuff. You know, I mean, there's some really. There was a guy that said, it was on Facebook. He said that he contacted the military about what I was doing, and that they had a plan in place to take me down. He goes, it's very interesting what they're going to do to you. And I was like, okay, you know, like the military is going to come after me. But I was so tired. And when I was flying to, when I was flying to Japan, I'm like, maybe they are going to take me down. Like maybe this is the whole plan. This is the whole plan. And yeah, that would be interesting that they invited me to do a Comic-Con, and I'm going to get to the Marine base and no one's ever going to see me again, you know. But I did think about that for a quick second. But
oh man,
yeah.
I love that you had that thought.
I did have that thought. I really did. I was like, maybe this is how it all ends, you know, is this trip, you know. So
but you have work that hangs in the Pentagon, correct?
I do. Yeah. It's crazy because when, you know, recently I've done a couple shows in Washington, D.C., and it's amazing how many people that work at the Pentagon say that they have my work hanging in their office. You know, it's not like hanging. I mean, as far as I know, I don't think it's not hanging anywhere like prominent, like when you walk in or anything, but it's hanging in these different departments and people's offices. And apparently it's all over the place, or there's quite a few that have it. Because the guy that initially told me, it was another Chicago thing, that he worked at the Pentagon. And he's like, yeah, our departments, we all have names for our departments. And his is, probably shouldn't tell you what the name of his department is. So anyway, they have a Star Wars name for his department, and they have my stuff hanging there. And I was like, oh, you should take a photo of it and send it to me. I'd love to see that. I'd post it online. He's like, yeah, we can't take a photo of the department at the Pentagon. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And again, when I was in Japan, like when I'm taking a photo out the window, I'm like, I'm going to get shot. Like someone's going to shoot me. Like I probably am not allowed to take photos of the base. I have no idea what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do. But that made sense too, that he couldn't take a photo of his department at the Pentagon. So I was like, oh yeah, okay. At some point, I'm just going to say that you have it. He's like, yeah, you can say that. He goes, but we can't release photos of our department. Okay.
Nice. Okay.
I'm like, all right, fair enough. But, you know, doing a show in Washington, D.C. was so many people that would come to the booth and are talking to me that have such like big, important jobs in Washington, D.C. is just mind blowing to me. And when I did that, Awesome Con is the show I did. When I first did it a couple years ago, I saw somebody walking around with a NASA bag, and you know, I'd done a show in Houston where they were there and they had great merch. And I asked somebody, I'm like, oh, where's the NASA booth? And he's like, oh, they're not like selling merch or anything. They have a table upstairs. And I'm like, oh, well, what are they doing? They're like, they're recruiting them, the FBI, the CIA, like they're all at the show recruiting. And I'm like, that's crazy. You know, that's absolutely crazy. And, you know, last year when I went, I talked to the CIA quite a bit. They gave me a bunch of swag, chip clip, and a backpack and some, you know, some stickers, some patches, but it was so neat. But they did give me a chip clip. It broke. But I just thought it was so neat. They were talking to me about careers and stuff. And they're like, are you interested? And I'm like, oh, no, I have my own thing. I'm an artist and, you know, it's fine. They're like, you'd be amazed at how many people are in the CIA. And I'm like, I'm sure I would be. I'm like, but, you know, I'm okay. but it's so Washington D.C. is so neat to me. I think it's very neat. And when people come to the booth, you can just see just certain people that have certain embroidered things on their polo shirts that I'm like, wow, that's pretty official, looking, and just the jobs that they have. And, I work here and I do this. But yeah, a lot of people at the Pentagon buy from me and would tell me that they have stuff in their offices, which is just crazy to me.
Well, it's cool, right? Know. It's cool to think that your art lives in the Pentagon.
Yeah, no, it's so cool. It's so absolutely cool. It's, I don't know. I think it's one of the coolest things. I don't know. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. I think it's pretty cool though. I don't know. That was one thing that I was always very just flattered. I don't know. Just flattered that like my stuff's in the Pentagon in offices. Yeah. I think it's so cool. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Yeah. It's just a very official place, So I just think that's so neat. I think it's so cool. It's like being in a museum for me. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In the land of museums, right?
And, yeah.
DC is like one of the most cosmopolitan places in the US as far as I'm
love
concerned.
It there.
It has like this European vibe to it.
It does. It's so cool. I'm not big into politics or any of that. I have my own thoughts or whatever, but just being there, there's so much history and just, I don't know. I just think it's one of the coolest cities I've gone to. Like, I really do. I mean, I went there as a kid, like on a field trip, but that was really just more about making out on the bus and like buying the knockoff Gucci stuff that was there, like when I was in 7th grade. So I remember being to the Smithsonian and seeing like Archie Bunker's chair. That's really about it. But when I went back a couple years ago, I visited so many landmarks and so many things. And it's just so like, I don't know. I really like Washington, D.C. I think it's a beautiful city. And I just think it's so neat. And people's jobs that they hold there are just like beyond me. Yeah, I just think it's so, I don't know. It's just so neat. Just one of the neatest places. To me, anyway. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. I want to talk a little bit about your mixed media stuff. We've talked a little bit about it, but
yeah,
I'm going to pull up a piece real quick.
Yeah, that's been like my main focus for a while, and I feel like it's starting to take more precedence over what I do. Yeah, that's an early piece there. I did that piece. I think it ended up changing. I don't remember exactly, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I did that piece at Art Basel. In 2019, I did a satellite event and I created a couple of the mixed media pieces live out in this parking lot, which was really neat. It was really neat to be there. And the satellite event we did wasn't promoted correctly, so it wasn't very well attended. But I set some of these pieces up ahead of time in my studio, and then kind of when I got to Miami, I kind of did the embellishments and the spray paint and all the fun stuff, basically, but gave myself like a palette to work on with those images. And the one tricky thing was during the day, it's so bright. It was so bright outside, and the pieces were so white that it was like blinding to look at them. It was really tough, because I'm used to being in my dark cave in my basement, and I have lights down there, but it's still it's very dim, so that was one obstacle I had in Miami working outside, was just, it's so bright, or at least where I was, there was it was so bright, but it was a lot of fun. I do have some video somewhere of me working on this stuff. I think this one there was definitely a Maryland piece, and I think it's this one that I worked on there. I'm sure there's, I can't tell from looking at it, but usually sometimes I'll hide information about the piece. And I wouldn't doubt that I have like a latitude and longitude of Miami or something that is Miami based.
That's pretty cool. And for I think people that are listening, this is entitled, it's a Marilyn Monroe piece. or she's the central focus of it, and it's called Who Killed Marilyn. And
Mm-hmm.
and I watched a YouTube video of you talking about this piece with some other
Mm-hmm.
pieces. It was there's a David Bowie piece, and I think I said Vicious piece in that
Okay.
video.
Yeah.
And I think this is the same Maryland piece that you were talking about. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but I
Oh,
wanted
no,
to
no, you're fine.
give listeners a reference of what we're talking about.
Well, this one, okay, I think the Maryland piece on that video was the very first Maryland piece I did, which it's the same portrait, but that one was much larger. It ended up going to a collector in LA. They look very similar. And that one I don't believe had a frame on it. But the idea behind this piece was, the 080562 that's at the top is when she died. And layered into the piece, like if you look, if you look towards the bottom, you can kind of see patient address, signatures, and at the top you can kind of see some other stuff. Basically what I did is I layered in, she had two prescriptions that I layered in. One was to keep her awake and one was to keep her asleep. And these were two things that were, factors in her death, supposedly. I also think that she was potentially murdered, and that's why it's entitled Who Killed Marilyn. But and kind of a reference to the Misfits a little bit. But I did that on the 080562 pieces. I don't know how many times I did this exact portrait, but that was the idea behind it, was just the two things conflicting of one prescription to keep her awake and one to make her sleep, which is also something I understand. I got to take melatonin about every night, and I got to have my coffee during the day. And, it's like one thing kind of counteracts the other to some degree. Obviously, these prescriptions were much stronger than my coffee and my melatonin, but that was essentially the idea behind this piece when I was working on it.
So the scripts that are behind the piece that you built the story around, are they actual digital copies of scripts of hers, or are they just something that you create? Okay.
Yeah, they're actual prescriptions of hers, like that the doctor signed and that I found online, and just blew them up and printed them out. So they're layered in there. It's hard to tell at this point, because of all the embellishments and things that I, do to it. But they're definitely they're in there for sure.
It's a great piece. I really like the thought behind it and what you did with it. And I've seen other people, other pop artists use imagery, but nothing the way that you go about it. Like,
thank you.
I just feel like it's very, what I've seen previous, it's very straightforward stuff. I don't feel like it's ultra thought out. And
I agree.
And so there you go. So I appreciate what you do, utilizing these images of famous people and so forth, telling a story. I mean, you're telling the story, right? You're a storyteller.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that I am in a lot of ways, oddly, which I never really considered. But, most of the pieces I do now, I might not go as in depth as I did with this, like with the prescriptions and that kind of thing. But there's always codes, it might be just a birth date or a latitude and longitude or a date or a saying or a quote, or there's always things embedded into the piece that have to do with the subject in one respect or another. And there are pieces that I have done that I have included things that were personal to me at that moment, and that's more the earlier pieces. I try and stay away from that now, especially with these pieces. I want them to be about the person, but there are times that I have done maybe a particular portrait of someone that might be kind of cryptic to someone else out in the world, and I don't let that out. Or there might be a title to a piece, a digital piece or whatever I'm doing that, kind of might let somebody know how I'm feeling at the time. When I did the portrait of a digital portrait of my version of Baphomet, I was in an extremely bad mood when I created Baphomet, and that was definitely a portrayal of just how I felt that evening. I was just very much ready to scorch the earth, and that's why that's how that image came about. I needed to focus, I needed to create something, but I was very, very mad. And it's one of my favorite pieces to this day. And it's also tough to create something digitally when I'm feeling an emotion, and coming from music, it's definitely much easier to portray your emotions, I feel, through music in a quicker way, and get out that aggression. Especially with Photoshop, it's so much, it's tedious, and it takes so much more time to try and portray how you're feeling. And with the mixed media, when I started doing it, there was definitely a lot of emotion involved in letting out a lot of aggression and frustration when I started doing that. But even now, there are maybe things that happen within my pieces that are cryptic to some extent, and maybe they're apparent to some people, but to a lot of people they're probably not. And I feel that that's okay. And I don't, it's even when I used to write lyrics, people would be like, what does this mean? And it's like, it means what it means to me. I want it to mean something different to you. There's songs that I like that I might feel one emotion, but when you read the lyrics, it's like, yeah, okay, this doesn't make any
Right.
it doesn't make any sense to how I feel, but I'm going to continue to feel the way I feel when I hear the song, regardless of what was actually written about. So I feel the same way with my artwork as well. And a lot of times, I'm just creating an image because I want it to be something for someone to look at,
Right.
escapism, or just something fun. It's not, because I've had a lot of people ask certain things. Oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? I'm like, it doesn't mean anything. This image doesn't mean anything. It's just something cool to look at. It's just something I created and had fun with. It's nothing, doesn't doesn't mean anything. But sometimes they do. Like the Baphomet piece, just letting out aggression, I guess. That doesn't always happen.
Yeah. I think it's a collaboration between the artist and the viewer. The viewer's got to come up with
Sure.
their part of it. And
Yeah,
so the question is like, maybe it doesn't mean anything to me, but what does it mean to you when you look at it? How
absolutely.
do you
I
interpret it? Yeah.
I like that thought of, artwork being a collaboration between the artist and the viewer. And I do feel it is very much that. The only time I'll kind of correct somebody is when somebody's absolutely wrong about a piece. And I've had that, like, oh, this
Oh,
has to do with something with politics or something, like I
yeah.
have my Elephant Man piece. Oh, this must have to do with Republicans. I'm like, no, it has to do with a creepy circus I created, and this is the Elephant Man. It has nothing to do with that. Like, don't, just stop trying to turn everything into something. It has nothing to do with that. So there has been times that I have had to correct people. Like,
Sure.
I don't even want you to think that. Like, I don't even want you to think that it has to do with politics, because it doesn't.
Right.
And even with Star Wars versus World War II, oh, this must mean, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Nope. This is not my commentary on anything. Like, this is literally the Star Wars universe invading Earth. That's what
Right.
it is. There's no secret any commentary or message I'm trying to get across. It's literally, it is what it is in front of your face. That's it.
I want to talk about process if we could on these. Let's
Sure.
let's say the Marilyn Monroe one or any of the other ones, the
Yeah.
mixed media one. So you start off in Photoshop and do your collage, I'm assuming, and then what do you print it on? Do you print it on canvas or? And I love the Heidi
Hedy
Lamar.
Lamar.
I
Yeah,
love
I do
that one.
too.
So,
Yes, that's one of my favorites.
do you print it off, and what do you print it off on? And then it looks like you do all sorts of different types of embellishment. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So what's odd about these is that, like I was telling you about the robots, and how when I was a kid, I'd draw on the back side of those pads, and then I'd piece the robots together. I never put this together till later. I basically do the same thing with these. I have posters that are all damaged. Bunch of posters that I have, a Star Wars versus World War II stuff. They're all damaged. So I have a paper cutter and I cut them all down and I print on the backside these images. And then I piece them all together, to make them larger. And then, rubber cement them down to wood. And then each aspect of that image, I nail the perimeter, of each piece. And then I'll distress it. And a lot of times dry brush over it. And then I start doing my, my embellishments and putting all my stuff, on top of it and just making it look damaged and written on, and makes it sound much simpler than what it is. It actually, it takes a lot of time to put it all together, and even setting, these images up on Photoshop. It's not always that easy to halftone these images. A lot of times they need cleaned up, and you got to go back and forth to make sure that, when it is halftone, that those little circles and those little dots are clean and they're crisp, and they're not blurry, and it doesn't look pixelated. And I feel like with what I do, I like to have a heavy contrast, between the blacks and the whites. And sometimes that's tough to achieve. It takes a lot of work to get it to that point, so you're not losing any information in the image either. And just cropping these out of their backgrounds, and sometimes you just, there might be hair that's cropped out, but I want it to look a certain way, so I got to redraw it in. Or there's a Wednesday piece I did recently for a friend where the image that I was using was cropped, and then I found another picture of her and put that part of her head back on, and the hair make sure the hair matched up, Photoshop and all that together, and so it looks natural and doesn't look like it's Frankenstein together. With the mixed media stuff too, I do feel, aside from my embellishments, I do feel that the portraits I pick and everything do have a vibe to them that's pretty consistent. I mean, if I'm doing a commission for somebody and they want a particular image, that might change things up a little bit for me. But I'll even try and direct people that want commissions a certain way with images. Sometimes people have an idea of something they think is going to work, but they want it like in a square like that, 24 by 24, and it's like the picture's not going to fit in that size correctly. You're going to lose so much information of the image. It's crazy how it started when I started the mixed media, because I started doing mixed media with my Star Wars versus World War II images, and then pretty quick went on to Marilyn Monroe and David Bowie, and those things. But just getting to these portraits, I really do enjoy doing them, very, very much so. And the one we've been looking at, this Hedy Lamarr piece, is by far one of my favorites. Like, I love that image of her. Like, I have one like that for sale currently. It might be that one too, I'm not sure. There's two that I've done, but one's still for sale, and I don't care if it sells or not, because I'll keep it. That's one that obviously I want to sell it, but I won't be sad if it doesn't sell either. I'll hold on to it. I do have some of my artwork at the house that I've held on to for one reason or another. So I mean, I do like what I do. I do enjoy it. I try and create things that I feel these pieces, it creates a juxtaposition, within decor, where these are pretty damaged and they're beat. You put a nice frame on them, you put them in a nice room, and they just, it's just a statement piece immediately. But even traveling, seeing guerrilla marketing, graffiti, in New York City or bigger cities and stuff, has definitely been inspiring to where these pieces are at and how I create them and how I feel they should look. And just little things are excessive. Like, by no means do I need to nail in the perimeter of each piece, but I just feel that it adds character, and it's something excessive that I don't know. It's just excessive, and that's why I do it. It's definitely not needed to happen, but it just adds that character and adds something a little bit different.
This one is 24 by 24.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
24
And
by 24.
so when you start with the picture of Hetty, obviously it's not that big. Do you interpolate it up, and what kind of
Yeah.
software do you use to do that?
Like to piece
To
it
make
out.
Yeah, to make it bigger and keep
Um,
the integrity of the image.
Photoshop, basically.
Okay.
Like I said, I use Photoshop for everything. So when I go to print it, I'll just pick out pieces of it and print that piece, and then the next piece, and
Gotcha.
the next piece, and the next piece. But that's a part of, half toning it too. Like I was saying, like when I'm creating it, it's, it is 24 by 24 inches, when I'm working on it. But I got to make sure that if I blow, especially with these old images like that, they're not high resolution,
Right.
So a lot of times I got to clean them up, and I do things so that they are high resolution, and so that the half toning is crisp and it's clean and they're perfect dots and not blurry or pixelated, or that can be really tricky. That can be really tricky. And sometimes it just barely works out, um, that is a big part of it too. And without doing all the photo manipulation and things I've done over the years, I don't think I'd be able to do a lot of these pieces. Like you said, there are other people that do stuff along the same lines. And, I have seen stuff that is pretty pixelated, or, could be cleaned up a little bit more
Right.
before it's printed. And maybe that's the look they're going for, and that's totally fine. I just feel that, I'm going to distress these and beat these up, so it would even hide pixelation to some degree. But I'd rather start with a clean, crisp, solid image when I do this stuff for sure. And then I think it helps show the distressing and the things that I'm doing organically to the image. And that's where all the fun comes in too, those aspects of doing these pieces. The prep work takes quite a bit of time, and I don't hate doing it. Sometimes I procrastinate getting into gluing it down and wanting to do all those nails, but once I get into it, it's fine, but doing the markings and the paint and all that stuff, that's where I have the most fun for sure.
So the text that's going up, and is that a stencil that you use to make that, or is that something you scanned in and added?
Sometimes it's a stencil. Sometimes it is like contact paper,
Okay.
and sticker put over top, and then it's distressed. Um, and then, obviously there's some handwritten stuff on there. There's other stencils. It just depends,
Yeah.
So I do different things on different pieces, but this one's a combination of stencils, contact paper, handwriting, even her. Sometimes I start distressing stuff and I distress it maybe a little too much, or it might take away a shadow, and you can see like on her right side, like her forehead and down through her cheekbone, where I took a pencil and shaded some things in more. And I believe I'm not sure on this one, it's hard to tell, but a lot of times, I will pencil back in, especially on the females, I'll pencil back in their eyeliner, um, the eyelashes, lips, a lot with the eyes, eyebrows. I'll usually pencil back in and redo their makeup with pencil, kind of make it darker. I don't always do that, but typically with the females, I will, especially if I feel it's needed. It just kind of makes the face a little bit more striking, especially if everything else is distressed and scribbled on. It just kind of gives a little bit more focus. That's why, when I piece these out, usually with the face, there's what I call, when I'm working on it, like the face plate. And you can see in the middle how like her face is kind of cropped out, and that pattern changes. So typically, very rarely does that not happen on any of my pieces. If it's a larger piece, it's kind of tough to do that sometimes, to pick out that face. But pretty much on any of these pieces, there is like a piece that just, kind of highlights just their face. And that piece of the pattern is a little bit different from the other squares.
And then the other thing I think is interesting is you got the longitude and latitude. Is that done with a like an acrylic pen, or what do you use that how to get
White.
that white?
Yeah, it's just a water-based white Sharpie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes I've used like a graffiti marker, a white graffiti marker, but those definitely will, they drip and they're a little bit bigger. But yeah, the white Sharpie has been definitely been in the arsenal for a while. One of my favorite things I use, because I'll use that to, like, if you look, I usually outline the right side of them, so it usually starts from like some point on their left side and then goes around the perimeter of the piece. You can see that white line that goes all the way around. And there's little details like that I don't feel they don't really stand out to you until maybe you see it or I tell you. I know that when I do it, it makes a huge difference on the piece. It makes that subject pop out. It makes them pop out of the piece more, and it's just something very subtle. It does give it dimension. Yeah.
Create separation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Separation, dimension. Yeah. It's absolutely a good way to say it, but it adds something for sure.
It's an amazing piece. I love it.
Yeah. Thank you. It's one of my favorites. This is one of my favorite images that I've worked with by far. By far one of my favorites. It's just such a great photo of her.
And then I want to talk about this new abstract piece that you just.
Yeah, sure.
And the evolution from the mixed media into this abstract. I mean, this is different media as well, mixed media. Yeah. But I love this, and
thank you.
I haven't spent a ton of time with it, but when I saw it today, and then you touched on it a couple times through this conversation, I was just like, we got to talk about this. And I there's something about it. It's very striking, and I love it, man. I really think you're on to something here, and I can't wait to see the evolution of where you're going in this direction.
Well, I appreciate that. This is something that even when I released it the other night, and I told my best friend Lindsay this, it was really the first piece of art that I've released that I did not ask anyone's opinion on. I didn't send it to her, didn't send it to my dad, any of my for my friend Mandy, my friend Jeff, like Eric, I didn't send it to anybody to be like, hey, what do you think? I just, I felt confidence in it. I'm like, I'm just going to put this thing out, and I don't need anybody telling me they dislike it or something because it just needs to be released. But I've wanted to do something abstract for a very long time. And this canvas is 48 by 48 inches.
Wow.
And I bought 3 of them like 3 or 4 years ago. And I've had one of them hanging, a blank canvas, a white blank canvas hanging in my bedroom. It's since I bought them because there was space, and I'm like, I just want to see if this would work. And it's just been hanging in there since. Now it's on my easel to do the second abstract piece. But this is something that, even from a young age, like, I guess the first things I think about is like a 9 Inch Nails album cover or Radiohead. There's always kind of like maybe something conceptual or abstract that I've always liked and kind of, I don't know, been drawn to. Even throughout the time of doing digital work, when I was doing freelance and was thinking of ways to make extra money, I was going to do like texture packs and put them out, because everything I did had some type of stained paper or distress or something over top of it. And I'm like, I know I can just put together texture packs that I know people can layer on top of stuff and would really like. That was always the thought. And that was years ago. And then, doing the mixed media stuff, there's little aspects like, I'll put these stickers over top of stuff. And I always I have names for everything I do on those. There's intent with everything, and everything's got a name. And the gray stickers that I put on a lot of stuff, those are my mini Rothkos. like Mark Rothko. I just feel like the square and some of the texturizing I do and some of the stuff is just very generic version of like a Rothko painting. And there's little aspects of all that mixed media that are in this piece, like the writing, the latitude and the longitude, and those big scribbles are primarily always in the top left corner of the pieces that I do. And, even my black X that I put on pretty much every piece, that X is in there towards the bottom, but, it's a white X just, with an outline. So essentially, this is like a chaotic version of one of my mixed media pieces and without a subject. And the other part of this, when I started working on this abstract piece, initially it was completely different and I felt that it was done. And this was 2 weeks ago. Then I sat with it and I sat with it and I'm like, it could be done. It's absolutely done. I can see this hanging on a wall, but it's just not how I want to portray it. So I sat down one night and I went through a lot of the master artists that have done abstract work. Mark Rothko, Cy Twombly, even Jean-Michel Basquiat. It's a lot of the elements of things that he did. There's a lot of negative space that alludes to abstract work. And then I started going through, I take a lot of photos when I go to Art Basel or art fairs or museums. And I went back to 2018 to the first Art Basel I went to, and photos of abstract things that I liked. And again, it was like, I know what I want to do, but I need to portray it the right way so that I'm comfortable with what I'm doing. And at the same time, I also started researching and reading, like, really anybody can do an abstract piece, and art is all subjective, but what is actually a good abstract piece from a bad abstract piece? What are these elements, or what are these things? And I had my own ideas of what that would be. And just off of how I felt and how I've seen things, it's basically, you need to have confidence in what you're doing. And whether it's a brushstroke or writing, there needs to show confidence in what you're doing. And there needs to be consistency at the same time. It can't just be, just, I see a lot of abstract work, even in high-end galleries, that I feel there's just a lot of slop. You see paint that was kind of put at the top, but then kind of fell off the brush and slopped at the bottom of the canvas. And I don't like that. For me, I don't know how people get away with keeping that on a piece. And even some of the masters have done that. It's just, to me, that's slop. But, I feel with this piece, there's movement to some degree. There's intent with everything that I'm doing. And, ultimately, again, with mixed media or anything I do, regardless if there's a meaning behind it or anything, I want it to be something cool that you continue to look at. And you just look at it and you look at it and you look at it and you look at it, and you don't get tired of looking at it, and you enjoy looking at it. And, I feel that can be difficult, to achieve at times, but I want you to be able to move your eye around a piece and continue to look at it. And this is one of those things too, like I said earlier, that the piece is so much better in person. You see all the texture, you do see the brush strokes, you do see my intent. And I feel that, with the texture, and, I'm big on composition, and at the same time, moving into doing some abstract stuff, it's not going to, it's just going to be something else I do. But even with my own decor, sometimes it's very difficult to say, I mean, for me, even with color, it's very hard to subscribe to a color in a room. I would rather just keep it neutral, and maybe the throw pillows or a color. But with this, to me, you're not saying if I had to pick one of my portraits, like, what portrait am I going to put in my living room? Is it going to be Hedy Lamarr? Is it going to be Audrey Hepburn? It's going to be Sid Vicious. I don't know what direction I'm going to go, but something abstract, for me, it's kind of easier to go with, And I just feel that it's a little bit more open, and I really, really enjoy doing this piece, and I'm very, very happy with the outcome of it. And I can't wait to work on the next ones. And it's nice to do artwork that doesn't have a subject. I mean, I put a latitude and longitude on there, so it gives it somewhat of a subject, I guess. But it was just really, I just really enjoyed working on it for sure. And I definitely want to move forward with more abstract pieces for sure. And it's something I've wanted to do for years, and I'm happy to finally complete one and put one out and honestly feel really good about it. Now, given in a year, I might hate it, but I don't see that happening. Like, I really, really like this piece a lot. And I definitely want to do more. It's the first time I've really, as far as I know, it's really the first time I've ever done anything for sure at this scale with a painting. I mean, it's straight paint. I didn't print anything, none of that. This is all a straight painting, which is something I've really never done. So it's great. It's fun.
So is this acrylic or oil or?
It is acrylic, and I used oil sticks, pencil, my white Sharpie, of course. um, and I think that's it. Water, if you want to count that.
Sure.
But yeah, that's it. It's all on canvas. It's not wood this time, and which I don't do. I don't do stuff on canvas. So this is all new for me. But I think I mentioned earlier, I put some of my mixed media work with it, and they all work very well together. They fit, and that was also important to me. I didn't want anything I did abstract to be completely separate. I wanted it to work with primarily the mixed media. Um, I have a solo show coming up in July, and that was a thought too. Like, I want these to work together for sure.
One thing I want to ask is, so you put the cross in. So how did that come about? Was it just something that you've always seen and you attracted to, or what was the thought behind, I'm going to put crosses in my pieces?
So that came about. I was looking at, I guess it was an art auction. So they were renovating the Chelsea Hotel in New York City. And because so many famous people had stayed there and so many iconic incidents had happened there, they were auctioning off all the doors to the rooms. And a lot of the doors had an X spray painted on them because they were to be removed. And I just thought it looked so cool. The more I started, and I didn't understand why the X's were on there. And then it's like, when they're going to demo something, if they're going to demo it, they put an X on it. So, initially, like with that Maryland piece we were looking at, I would spray paint the X on there, and then eventually, there was a piece I did, I spray painted an X on it. I believe it was a Debbie Harry commission that I did. And then I started doing the X's with electric tape. And I'm like, okay, I really like these. And then, I was splashing white paint on another piece, and then a couple drops hit the black. And that's why most of those X's, there's like, I've got one dot at the top and two at the bottom, just to kind of keep it consistent. But that's how that came across, because most of these pieces to me are something that are going to be demoed or removed from wherever they were, because they've been damaged and now they're being reclaimed, like those doors from the Chelsea Hotel auction. So that's what the X's mean, is that they're to be demoed or removed because they're damaged.
And then how about the longitude and latitude? Where did that kind? I love these ideas. I'm just curious of how they develop and where they come in.
The latitude and longitude, like, I think I've had it on a Maryland piece. It was for LA, where she died,
sure,
for the one piece. I've done like the commission for Essentia, the salon in North Hollywood. I'll, put the LA latitude and longitude on that too, because that's where those salons located. Or Hedy Lamarr, that one's, where she was born. I have her birth date on there, and then the city that she was born in, the latitude and longitude. This one, for me, was, the Roman numerals are for this year, and this latitude and longitudes for New York City. And like I said earlier, my intent is to relocate to New York City. So this being kind of a new piece for me in a new direction, I, kind of feel New York. Well, I feel that moving to New York City is a new direction, so that's where those two things coincide. And, I wanted to put writing on this too, so it's fluid with the mixed media stuff. And because I've got New York City on my mind constantly lately, that's what made the most sense to put that in there. And if you look, there is a formula that's kind of erased, and it's underneath the latitude and longitude, and that is the molecular formula for an apple, like the Big Apple. So sometimes there's little things that are also kind of hidden, and even underneath there, that formula is written again in the white. It's very hard to see in that photo, but it is written and kind of painted over in that kind of big white space on the bottom right corner.
Yeah, I love this. I love the idea, the thought behind it. And it's like I said, I'm just curiosity is why. And we have another artist that we've talked to, Joey Curlin, and he does X's, but his are red typically. Okay. And so it's just interesting. Like I see it. And, obviously you guys aren't the only two that are doing that. You see this repetition of symbolism, and sometimes it's different symbols, but I'm always like curious of like where this all comes from. And I've heard of people like writing in, underneath the paint, at some layer, and then they totally paint over it. But they have this memory of this, this time of painting and all, and, the writing underneath, or, whatever. And I think that's just brilliant. So I do really like this piece.
Thank you.
It
means a lot.
Yeah. I can tell.
It was, to some degree, it was scary to even just post it on Instagram, because it is something different, like completely different. But again, I just felt so much confidence in it. And it's like, whether people don't understand it or not, I do feel like, like I was saying with abstract work, I had to even look up like what makes it good, what makes it bad, what should it be like, obviously everything's subjective. And if even something's done correctly that would be considered good, it doesn't mean that anybody likes it, but then something could be done incorrectly and people like it, there's that too. It's subjective. But it's like, if I am going to do something abstract, I do want to, I'm capable of slopping something on canvas like anybody, but I want to be able to have confidence in what I'm doing, and the art world understand, why I made the marks I did, or show that I have intent and that I have confidence behind everything that I'm doing. And there is everything in this piece there, there's a reason that I did it the way I did. So things flow, and the composition, obviously I'm biased, all fits into place, and your eye moves the way I want it to.
It has a strong sense of balance too. So
Thank you.
I like that.
And that's important. That's so anything I do, there should be a strong sense of balance. I mean, even when I'm doing an art fair or a Comic-Con, when I hang stuff to be displayed, there needs to be balance. I make sure the way eyes are pointing and everything, direction, pieces, any piece, I feel, maybe not this one so much, but even with the Star Wars versus World War II, there's like it's a lot of times those pieces are either pointing right or left, or maybe it's looking right at you, but I'll definitely hang things so that everything's kind of pointing towards the center, or at least your eye is going to move around. That's always been very important to me. Even when I started 13th Floor and I was an art gallery and I'd hang a show, same thing, the way everything is displayed, and I want your eye to move the right way, and not just like look at a wall and just see a bunch of stuff and be like, what which way do I go? Where do I look at, like, where do I go? If things are just moving in every direction, I just don't feel that that's cohesive,
Mhm.
to get your point across at all.
This is a hell of a start, Billy,
Thank you. Thank
on
you.
this path. And
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
I didn't see a title. So do you have it titled yet?
Yeah, it's skeleton. I'm calling all this abstract work skeletons because I feel it's essentially the bare bones of what I do with my mixed media work. And this is also something I did when I wrote music, when I would just have an idea and demo things and just maybe put guitar to drums or synth to drums or something like that. I had all these demo tapes I called skeletons because they were just literally the backbone or the bare bones of something that I did. So this one is, my idea is just to call it a skeleton and then put the, in Roman numerals, put the month and the date. And this one is, skeleton 223-1 because it's the first one. So I feel like I'm just going to keep them simple. I could just say untitled. There's plenty of abstract work that's just untitled, but calling them skeletons, I felt fit me a little bit more, and is what was the idea behind them too. Of how I wanted to do that stuff so that it was cohesive and fluid with other, with the mixed media work that I do. So yeah, this one's a skeleton, and moving forward, at least that's the idea right now. Obviously things can change.
I like it. I like it because it's consistent with your brand,
I thought so too with my, yes.
Yep.
With my Skull and Bones logo. Yep. I felt that made sense too. So,
most definitely. So yeah. I kudos for not calling it untitled.
Thanks. Yeah. That's so boring, it's fine. Who knows? I'm sure I think I've put out stuff that is untitled at one point, but
sure.
With this stuff, I wanted to have more of a direction, I guess, Yeah,
I like it. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Todd's right on the money. This is a great start because we've looked at a fair amount of abstract through the past 4 years, and sometimes it's just like they've been doing it for a while, and it's just like I don't know.
Well, and that's where I'm at too. I feel that, like I said, I feel like anybody can pretty much do an abstract piece, sure. And if you enjoy doing it, that's great. And that's one of the reasons I was a little afraid to put it out in the world, because I know someone's like, oh, I can fucking do that. I can scribble on a canvas too and throw some, of course you can.
I was one of those people.
I am too. Yeah.
It's not that. And we're not, Wes and I are not experts, but we have looked at a lot of abstract work.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. And I would say that this piece here is a legacy piece. When you were gone, somebody will look at this and go, this is the beginning of something significant. And I think if you would be happy as a person that does abstract work, if you created that, you would be really happy with it. I think what you're doing is really important. Like, you're onto it.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see where this is all going, but I do.
Me too. I appreciate that very, very much more than I can say. Cause it, and I feel that way too about this piece. Like, I don't know, there's just something about it to me. And I mean, I also know where it started. I know where it went. When I finished it the other night, it was like 4 a.m. and I just kept staring at it. I just wanted to continue staring at it. And I feel that way, even with that Hedy Lamarr piece. I keep staring at it, And to me, that's important. Like, I want to be able to continue to look at my work and not hate it or not want to change something. And this piece, that's why I didn't show it to anybody else, And again, art is subjective. And I feel with abstract work, it's very subjective. And I do feel it's a tough realm to be in. I really do. And it can be a challenge to look at and say, this is good from bad. And that's why I've read up on it. And for years I've, like I said, I've taken photos of the things I like. And, like, why do I like this? I mean, I've even asked people that own galleries, like, what is it about this piece? I like it. I just don't know why I like it. and they'll say, well, it does this, it does that, and that's why we like it. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Shows movement, it does this, it does that. And but I appreciate your thoughts on this, because it really, I definitely put a lot of thought into how I'm going to execute these pieces. And I do feel that the first one was definitely going to be like, okay, this is the path I'm going to go. I don't want it to be where it's like, well, I experimented with this one and now I'm going to experiment with the next one and the next one. And they're all going to be vaguely different, and kind of not make sense. And that might happen to some degree, but I really feel like this definitely portrayed what was in my head. And there's definitely a couple other little tricks that I'd like to include on some of the next pieces or down the road, that I have in mind. But, they're not too far off from what I've already done. And I really appreciate that. I really like this piece, and I'm excited to do more, of them. And again, there's not a subject. This is just something like, even working on it, it made me feel good just to work on something, and just kind of be free with it. And, all that white paint and moving it around, and it's dripping and moving and moving and moving it up and down and back and forth. And, there is a lot of I mean, given this was finished a couple times and then I painted over it and changed it. So there is a lot of layers for sure. There is a lot of paint on this canvas. But even moving forward, there's going to continue to be a lot of paint, because I feel like I needed to do those first one or two paintings that were finished in order to have those textures and those layers and those markings that are in the background that I painted over. And I don't know, but thank you. I'm really happy with this. I am very excited to move forward with more of the abstract work, for sure. Not that I'm going to leave the other stuff in the dust, but I am excited to continue to do more of these, for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing, Billy.
Yeah, thank you. I'm proud of a lot of the things I do, but this was an accomplishment because I've been wanting to do this for so many years. But I also wanted to do it, like I said, the right way. I do feel there's a right and a wrong way to do abstract work, and that's tough. It's really, there's no right or wrong in art, but
no, there's not. But having that intention and thought behind it, and again, we've talked about this many times. When you see something good, it. Like you don't have to be some kind of art expert or expert in abstract expressionism. When you see something good, people know. And it's honest. This is honest work.
Thank you. And I feel it is too. I'm not trying to imitate anything. I'm not that I try and imitate anything with anything I do, really, but I don't know. This is me, and that's why I feel good about it too. Like I said, it was done at one point, and maybe someday I'll show everybody when it was initially done. It's totally different, I mean, to some degree, but, it's like, yeah, it's done. It's cool, but it's not, I can do better. I can do better than this. And it's not saying what I want it to say. It needs to be bolder. It needs to say more, do more. And I feel that I got it to that place, for sure. And I'm excited to do the other ones, and I'll just keep working it until I get it to where it, where I'm comfortable and where it needs to be. And sometimes just saying I'm done with something is extremely difficult too, because I could always do more, or see something I could fix. Even with this one, there's things like, I could have done this, I could have done that. But yeah, I'm very happy with it. Very
right there, that's a sign of a true artist, when you're never quite happy with anything that you're producing, where you always think that you could have done better, you do things differently, right? That's just the way it works.
Yeah,
never happy.
I mean, I've learned to walk away, where it's like, this is good. It's good where it's at. If I make another mark or try and do whatever I'm thinking, I could literally ruin it. I could literally ruin it with this idea. And then you're going to be really pissed at yourself, because it's great where it's at. Like, I will photograph a lot of things where, if it's good now, I might photograph it, because I'm going to ruin it. And I did that with this a couple times. You know, initially there was no black until I dumped black down the side of it, and the drips were great. They were so good. And this paint that I used on it was old. It was like old paint. And or not necessarily old, just the lid wasn't put on it very good. So it made it thick like tar. And the way it dripped down the canvas was just, it was so thick. It was sticking like half inch off the canvas. It was so thick and just huge dripping down the right side of it. And it looks so cool. And I was just like, yeah, I can do better than just dripping paint down the canvas. And then I just started moving it around. And, you know, initially it was kind of a gray piece, grayish. And then it was totally black. And that black drip just ended up across the whole entire piece. And then that's when I started putting the white on top of it. And well, I think I did the scribbles and then the white, and you know, but it changed a lot, especially when I did that black paint. So the drips were good that I did it, but I was kind of mad at myself for a minute because it looked really good. And the drips looked really good, but I'm glad everything happened the way it did. But I was kind of upset with myself for a minute because I thought I ruined something. And then I just kept working it and working it and working it until it got to where it's at. So
there you go. Sometimes it's just sticking with it, right? Grinding.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I did. I stuck with it and I didn't give up and worked on it. I mean, it was over the course of 2 weeks, really, but there was one night that it just went to exactly where it's at. Literally one night, you know, and where it all changed. But it's also years of thought and, you know, 2 weeks of sitting on the easel while I'm working on other stuff and looking at it and liking it and hating it, and then deciding one night, okay, it's something needs to change, and then start working on it, you know, and it ended up where it's at. And that's the thing too, when I work on pieces, there's a lot of thought. Like even when I do freelance work, like, well, what do you charge for the hour? I'm like, I just charge for the project. I'm like, because as soon as we talk about it, I'm already going to be thinking about it. And if I don't even have to start this for 2 weeks, I'm going to continue to think about it. How do I charge you for that? Like, how do I charge you for my thoughts? Like, I'm always going to be thinking about it. And if I'm working on something, I might get it done real quick. It might take me longer. I don't know. I might screw things up. So I'm not going to charge you for me researching or screwing things up. Like that just doesn't seem fair. So I always charge people for the project. I know how my mind works, you know, especially with all the travel I do, whether, you know, I drive most places, and, you know, I'm always thinking. My mind is just going and going and going and going. And I have gotten to the point where I might work on a complete abstract piece in my head while I'm driving and trial and error things and ideas. And obviously actually doing them is something completely different. But I'm always thinking, always working out ideas. And even though I might have got it done, I wouldn't say I got it done in a night, but I'd say where it went, from where it was to where it went, was a night. But there was still a lot of time and a lot of thinking ahead of time, you know, before that.
Sure. And this piece is for sale, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So if you're listening out there and you're curious, go to Billy's website. I think it's on both your website and 13th Floor, right?
You know what? I don't think I've even uploaded this one to my artist site yet. I know there's quite a few pieces that I need to update on there. It is on the 13th Floor site though. Okay. It's under mixed media. And then I started a new, paintings page too. But this is the only one on there. But I did start under art, there's different, headings, you know, prints, print sets, mixed media. And I started paintings on there. So that was kind of exciting to add to the website as well.
So if you're in the market for a really beautiful piece, you have a space in your house, your home, your office, whatever, go to 13thfloor.us and check it out.
Yes, please do.
and you won't be disappointed. And I think this would be a stellar piece to have in your collection.
I agree. I
There,
agree.
there is my little plug for you, Billy.
I appreciate that. Right now, it's in my collection, and it's actually hanging on my wall at the house, and I love it. So, but I'll be extremely happy if someone purchases it as well. But I do love this piece.
We're going to wrap this up, but I do
Sure.
want to mention and talk about 13th floor and what that is, and
Sure.
you know, kind of the, if you can kind of give us like a basic evolution of what that evolved from, because I know it's kind of started out as like in a gallery scenario, right?
Yeah, yeah, it did. Um, so basically, I was renting an old storefront, and I was renting it as a rehearsal space, and I lived above it. Even the space above it was initially our rehearsal space, and I took over the whole entire second floor of this building. Everything was, the rent was extremely cheap, and these were very, very big spaces. You know, I was bartending at the time. I really wasn't making any money at all, and I just felt like, you know, if I'm going to be broke, I'd rather be broke doing something I enjoy. I had bartended for years, and it was just getting to the point where I just wanted to kill everybody. Like, anybody got mouthy, get the fuck out. Like, get the fuck out of here. And I never drank when I worked, and eventually I had to start drinking just to tolerate people while I worked. And then it kind of turned into, probably not a good idea if I drink while I work, because now I'm really just throwing everybody out. Like, get out. I didn't I didn't want to deal with anybody. And I just felt like, you know, it's absolutely time for me to move on from this. You know, I had a lot of friends that were artists locally as well, and I'm like, I'm just, you know, I'm gonna, the band was doing fine at the time, but I'm like, I'm gonna turn the rehearsal space in the storefront into an art gallery. And I did. And I had a zero, not even zero, I had a negative budget, absolute negative budget. Busted my ass. I mean, before the grand opening alone, I was up for, I think, 72 hours straight, something like that, and getting it ready. It was a great grand opening. I was on the front page of two local papers, plenty of interviews. I was meeting with the mayor, city council. Like, it was my first customer was the mayor of the city. You know, it was great, but it was very difficult to maintain business. I remember, you know, 1 month, all I sold was a dollar can of Monster that I had in the cooler. That's all I sold for a month. And so, you know, I was still kind of bartending a little bit. I was still doing freelance design pretty heavily. And it was just, it was a lot. It was, and constantly just a lot of problems with the artists that were there that kind of acted as though, I don't know, that I was an ATM. Um, there was just a lot of issues, a lot of big personalities, you know, with artists, and a lot of arrogance and a lot of things, and it wasn't going well. And then there was a shop, tattoo shop, next to the original location, and a lot of problems with that shop. So we moved down the road, and then the art district in Canton kind of persuaded me to move there, so I did. And when I moved, you know, because I was having so many problems with the artist, eventually it just evolved into my artwork, and 13th floor starting to turn into more, you know, a little bit of a clothing brand, you know, kind of bizarre boutique art gallery clothing brand. And next to the gallery, I ended up opening a bar, the Speakeasy, and connected the two spaces. And we were only open for the art walks every month, which was first Friday. And at this point, you know, but in, like, I would say, I don't know how this went. I think I moved to Canton, and then you know, money was really bad, like really bad, really, really bad. And I always had the idea that I could, you know, start doing Comic Cons or horror conventions and sell my work. And, you know, I would do art shows around town, and I would be excited if I made like $350. You know, that was like, fuck yeah, you know. And so I booked myself for Horror Hound, and I even borrowed some money from my dad to pay for the booth. And it started off like I need to make this amount of money to pay for rent, to pay for this, to pay for all these things, and then it turned into I need to make this amount and this amount, and the amount just started to get so obnoxious that I needed to make it the show. And I put a lot of work into it. I put a lot, building the booth, and I probably tripled what I needed to make at this first show, and just absolutely fucking killed it. And it changed everything. And so then I took money from that show, paid my dad back, bought a booth at another show at Motor City Comic Con, killed it there, bought another show, for Chicago. My first year doing shows, ended up at New York Comic Con, like 6 months later, killed it there. And, I was on the road so much that I really wasn't at the gallery. I wasn't there for the art walks or any of that. And, initially when I was down there, I think maybe I was in the arts district for a year before we opened the bar, maybe. And I loved the space I created with Speakeasy. It was, silver tin ceilings, and I designed the bar, and, nice hardwood floors, and everything was just very, very loungy, very nice, and but it just got to the point where I was so busy being on the road, and then the website was getting busier and busier the more I was on the road. So, during in between shows, we would convert the gallery and the Speakeasy into a warehouse to handle all the shipping. And then we'd have to switch it all back into a gallery and a bar just to handle the business for one night. And we were doing okay money wise, but it just wasn't enough, and we kind of outgrew we literally outgrew the space. Underneath all the tables in the gallery were just boxes and boxes of, prints, that I would have to take to shows. And it just got to be too much, aside from just a lot of issues with downtown, other businesses and things, and cattiness and whatever. So I ended up getting a warehouse in Akron, 2,200 square foot warehouse. And we did everything out of there, and I booked more shows. At one point I did I think 30 to 40 shows in a year. And, it just kind of went from there, and doing the shows, built, build up the website. And, the pandemic hit, and then that took away 2/3 of the business. So I had to start learning how to survive off the website again, which is a completely different, and by no means that were the sales on the website going to be able to, financially take care of everything I was making while I was on the road at the time. And then I made it work. I, of course, had to learn how to operate on less, like plenty of people during the pandemic. But I got comfortable with that too. The pandemic was rough for a lot of people. For me, it was like the first time in how many years, I first got on the road in 2013, that I was actually home for 2-3 months at a time. I hadn't had that in years. So I was able to catch up with myself, catch up with things at the house, work on ideas, and just be creative. And it was really good for me. To have that time to myself to be able to do those things. And, I don't know. And now it's just the mixed media came in about 2018, because I knew with Star Wars versus World War II, everything is riding on the series pretty much. There needs to be something else, and I need to do something else. And I was just getting frustrated with a lot of things anyway, and even frustrated with relying on that series to be, essentially the breadwinner. I'm like, I can do more. This was never my intent to be wrapped up in Comic Cons and stuff. This is just where all my stuff is excelling, and I wasn't doing anything else. I don't feel that I was moving forward with anything else that I could do. And I think that's why initially with the mixed media, it was done out of destruction and letting out frustration. And then it turned into something, more refined, I guess. And now it's just I don't know. I feel like 13th floor. I would really like 13th floor to be more of a clothing line at this point. Not that we have like one T-shirt on there right now, because I'm trying to find new printers. I might start screen printing myself. I've been working on that too, and screen printed years ago. It's been a while. I don't even want to have that conversation right now about screen printing, but we're working on it. I'm working on it. So maybe my cat can do it. I don't know, but I'll get back to it again. But that was, even the abstract painting, I was working on screen printing and I had an issue. And then I'm like, I'm just going to work on the painting. I'd rather work on the painting anyway. So, but that's where it's at right now. I mean, I feel like things are definitely in a transition right now. I don't have any intentions of doing any Comic Cons this year. That could always change. I could end up doing New York. I don't know. I doubt it. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I would rather focus on being creative. I'd rather focus on art fairs and getting my work into galleries and focus on the mixed media and the abstract work. It's not to say that I'm going to never do anything Star Wars versus World War II again. That's not, or anything, Vaudeville Phantoms or Galactic Samurai, any of that stuff. It's still there. It's just not where my focus is right now, and, but even from the 13th floor standpoint, I've been working on restocking everything. We've been sold out of some stuff. We just, after shows and stuff last year, a lot of stuff needed restocked the holiday season. So I've been working on restocking, working with a new print shop, and that's been going well. So it's not like those things are going to go away. And I want to add to the series, but right now, for sure, my focus is on mixed media and just kind of the art fairs and trying to, one of my main goals, honestly, is to be at Art Basel, like have my work at a gallery at Art Basel. I mean, yeah, I did a satellite event and created live art, but that's, and I would do it again for sure. But I really, I want to be involved with these larger art fairs on a different level, and so that's my focus and the goal right now. And maybe it'll happen and maybe it won't, but and even with the art world, things are changing. I mean, I sell a lot just based off of stuff I post on Instagram. People go into the website, and a lot of people don't really need galleries anymore, but I still think that they're essential in a lot of ways to move to different levels. I am doing some art fairs that would be considered more for emerging artists, but I do want to get to that level. So that's definitely a focus for the rest of this year. Kind of one of the reasons too that I want to back away from doing Comic Cons and put my focus there for now. Anyway, everything's in I feel in a transition, like a good one, like a good transition. Just a little different. I don't know if everyone will be happy with the decisions that I'm making. I'm sure some people will be upset that I won't be at Comic Cons, and I don't know that that's going to last forever, and I might go back. But for this year anyway, that's the plan. And but it could always change. Things always change. So we'll see.
And what's great is you offer something for everyone. So if you go to 13th floor, you will see that there's something that can be purchased for, if you really enjoy Billy's work, there's something for everyone there. If you're a teenager with not a lot of cash, you can buy a print.
Yeah.
There's stuff that you can purchase, which I think is always smart.
That's so important to be able to offer different price points. And that was, when I was in the art district, a lot of the other galleries were like, you're cheapening your art. And I'm like, it's a digital file, and I would rather more people have my art than not, these images with Star Wars versus World War II. Why would I not want everyone to be able to have it? There's so many people that collect it. But then, eventually people are like, I wish I could buy the original. I wish there was more limited edition stuff, which was another reason mixed media came around, so that there is something more original and more limited. I just think it's better that way. And, with abstract paintings, that's something that's more limited, and those are, different price points for sure. Some people want to spend more money on art. I've learned that too. Like they don't want to have a $300 piece in their house because they spent 1.5 million on it, and they want to put something that's a little bit higher end up too. But I think having, price points that hit a lot of different people's budget is super important. Even age groups. I mean, when I look at reports and analytics and all that, I hit a lot of different age groups, which I'm fortunate for. Men, women, young, old, the whole thing. And I'm very, very fortunate for that I do hit that. And you're right, anybody can go to that and go to my site and be able to buy something. I think that's super important. I would never want to exclude anyone's budget, from being able to buy something I have. And I think, whether it's a $15 piece, print, or $1,000+ original piece, there's something for everybody. That's important to me.
And sure. I think, the cheaper stuff, in the future, you're building collectors. They start with their prints, and then as they mature and have more money, sure, they might start buying your mixed media stuff and your abstracts.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And that's, I have a Shepard Fairey print in my sneaker room. I have a spare room that is my closet essentially. And I have a lot of sneakers, so I call it my sneaker room, but I have, one of his prints in there that he did, like a 40th edition Misfits print. And it was like $45, and it's great for me to have it. I can't necessarily afford an original big Shepard Fairey piece, but I have something that he did and he signed it. And I think that's awesome to have, for $45. That's great. That's somebody that I look up to. I'm fortunate that I was able to buy that, so I think you're exactly right. As people mature, they, or get more money or whatever the situation is, like, right. Yeah. But even if you can't, you should still be able to get something from me. So yeah, it's important.
Well, I love your work. I think it's amazing. Yeah. And I love the mixed media stuff. I just love looking at it, and it's really well done. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Very much.
So my last question, and I started asking this question to artists, do you have a mantra or motto that you live by?
I don't know.
I know you have a really beautiful quote from Allen Ginsberg on your website that I really liked. I'd never heard that before.
Yeah. That is the
it's follow your inner moonlight, don't hide the madness.
That is something that hit me pretty hard. I will say that. Because I feel like even when we talk about good and bad art and there's no rules, and I give myself too many rules. I really do. I give myself a lot of rules. And that's one thing when I go to museums and I've seen like, oh, they didn't even paint on a canvas. They painted on like I don't even know what the hell that is. That's like a piece of wood nailed to some other wood. And I don't even know what that is. And it's at a museum. And it's like, there are no rules. And for somebody who's been a perpetual rule breaker throughout my whole entire life, the amount of rules I've given myself is crazy. I mean, when I have a formula for something, to keep it consistent, that's different. So, that quote made me think about how I give myself rules, and again, like, saying earlier, there's no matter what I do, I'm going to piss somebody off. Obviously I know certain things that maybe I have an idea. This is definitely going to piss people off. But even something as simple as an elephant on a moonball, or an elephant man is going to make people mad. I mean, I would never expect such a thing, but it happens. I don't know that I necessarily have my own motto or mantra, but I think like a lot of those quotes I will post online do affect me one way or another. That's why I post them, and there's an interview I've posted numerous times with David Bowie that, he's talking about artists and not to, play to the gallery and try and play to the, I'm paraphrasing, but, do what you feel, is inside you, and don't do stuff just for the crowd or to make people happy. And I think that I get caught up in that sometimes too. Even with Star Wars versus World War II, I I want to maintain the crowd and I don't want to piss people off. So I do feel like I have something to live up to with that, you know, but I also want to do pieces that I like. And I mean, I think doing the mixed media was kind of some freedom from that. It is a little restrictive at times, I guess. But I don't know if for myself, if I actually have like a particular mantra or motto. I think there's maybe too many different things that I think about. Like that Allen Ginsberg quote is definitely important. There's times that I feel like it's okay if I show a little bit more emotion in this piece or be a little bit more transparent about how I feel about something. I do feel that I hide that. People that are close to me know me as a pretty emotional person. And I do feel that I kind of keep a restriction on that to some degree, and even with that quote, it's like, well, maybe I should just let that out a little bit more at times. And when I did music, it was easier to let that out, and maybe that's just what I've always been used to and how I would release that aspect of how I feel. But yeah, I don't know. That's something I would have to sit and think about. I don't think that there's one motto or one mantra that I subscribe to. I think it would be a lot of different things, but they maybe still all point in the same direction. Even the Bowie thing I was talking about is still to some degree very consistent with that Allen Ginsberg quote that you mentioned. So maybe something along those lines is actually my mantra or my motto. Something to think about.
And thank you so much for spending time with us tonight.
Thank you. This was great. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. This was great. Thank you for showing interest in what I do. It means a lot. It means a lot.
Yeah, it was an absolute honor, and it's nice to talk to you. I have my own prediction about where this is all going. So I'm going to write it down on a piece of paper. I'm going to date it.
Okay.
And we're going to revisit this at some point, have you back on again sometime. And
that'd be great. I'm all about it. Yeah.
See where we're at.
Okay. I'm all about it. Yeah. I'll be interested to see what you write down. Hopefully I live up to it.
This was fun. This was a blast.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. And I do love your work. I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
So pleased that we were able to sit down with you. So thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. I appreciate the invite, and this was great talking to you guys. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Again, check out Billy's work on his Instagrams at Billy Ludwig and at 13th Floor. And the website's billyludwig.net and 13thfloor.us. As usual, you can find all this and more in this week's episode notes. For the Tenet Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.